Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, he declared, and then took his whip and began to beat the man. Move faster, you useless thing. The only thing that will improve my mood now is dining with my favorite slaves, he said as he whipped the man more. The passers-by didn't even seem to care, not even the slave himself, who after all, death would be more merciful than that situation. Move faster, he exclaimed, shaking the whip, and at one moment he looked up at the sky and saw a very bright star. What is that? He said as he stopped attacking the slave, while snot ran from his nose, in his astronaut helmet. It's getting bigger, he spoke, foolishly, and many others in the city looked up at the sky and noticed too. But now, it no longer seemed like a shooting star, as more time passed and it increased in size, until something that everyone realized and became alarmed and shocked, entering into a certain despair. That? A Tenri Obito shouted. Ah! The Tenri Obito who was in front of the slave got scared and jumped off the buccaneer and ran on his own. This began to happen throughout the entire city. After all, it proved to be a meteor at a distance that began to illuminate the whole place, while the 5 elders looked at it, shocked and angry at the same time. After all, that pirate really had something like this in his hands, and even more courage to launch something like this at the holy city to prove his words. Not that they were worried, but this power was really a threat. While at a distance, from the luminous Mary Jo eyes, thousands of kilometers in the sky, a meteor passed at this moment while the huge rock burned, releasing smoke and fire in its tail as it rushed to the ground with the help of gravity and with an extra force from the Po controlling it, while its target was the most powerful city in the world. Chapter 246, Talking with Gorosei 03. Many miles from that meteor, as the sky was lit with the force descending with a huge tail of fire, leaving its trail in the sky while a thunderous sound was heard by everyone, no matter how distant and low it was. Sengoku, who was leaving the meeting at this moment while heading to rest in his apartment in the same buildings, stopped in the middle of a window. After all, he saw the glare on the horizon. He didn't take long to identify what it was. What is that? A meteor? He asked, surprised and dazed. Is that going where I think it's going? He calculated the trajectory of the meteor and couldn't be more surprised. After all, it was going to the red mountain that separated the new world from paradise, but this only made him think that it was not something natural, and seeing where it would fall, it was quite obvious that this was an attack going towards Mary Jo eyes. I have to see what's happening now, he immediately exclaimed, running back to his office. He was not the only one seeing the bright light in the sky. Many sailors at Marineford were looking into the distance, stunned while pointing at the sky. Zai ha 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 ha. What is that? Teach asked, surprised, looking up at the sky. A meteor. I've never seen one, Virtus exclaimed. The event began to appear in various parts of that sea. In the Sabati archipelago, people were peacefully enjoying the night while some crime happened here and there with the amount of pirates on the island. However, the sky lit up for them more than for any other part except for the city of Mary Jo eyes itself. Silvers really stepped out of the bar at that moment along with Shakayaku accompanying him. After all, the sky caught their attention while they were inside the bar. This. Shakayaku looked surprised at the sky. A meteor, and it's heading for. Really, murmured, quite shaken by it. Mary Jo eyes. Who could do this? She completed and asked, alarmed. After all, this was not just anything. It reminds me of Shiki. Is he still alive, and has he gone completely mad? The former first mate of Goldie Roger said. This will be troublesome if it hits the city. Shakayaku commented. Yes, but surely the world government can deal with this. He spoke. He himself could cut that meteor, but he would be quite tired due to his age. However, I can't imagine how the government would retaliate against something like this. Really said, never having expected to see something like this in his life. It was much more chaotic than what Fisher Tiger had done many years ago. Hundreds of kilometers from the location, Black Pearl was stationed at sea while the sky was illuminated with the meteor. You brought a big one, Bippo. Luffy smiled at that. Captain. What have you made me do? Bippo exclaimed, frightened, imagining what he would destroy with that. Relax. Do you really think a small stone in the sky can do something to that city? Luffy spoke with a small smile, still watching a beautiful show of lights cutting through the sky, passing through the night clouds while giving a spectacle to the eyes of all spectators as it continued flying towards the horizon. That! Kuina exclaimed, stunned. Just like all the Straw Hats looked at it, stunned, seeing the strip of fire descending. Shirahoshi, who seemed more excited about it than everyone there, exclaimed. Look, a shooting star. I've never seen one. I better make a wish. She said, already crossing her hands as if praying. That's not a shooting star, that's a meteor. Nami exclaimed with a comic face. Is this a natural effect? Zoro asked, frowning, wondering where it was falling. No, the one who did this was Luffy, there. He asked Pippo to throw a stone from the sky. It's going to a city called Mary Joyce. Yamato commented after hearing the entire conversation with Luffy and the communicator from a distance, while eating a piece of meat without caring too much, although the light show was quite pleasant for her. Mary Joyce. Where is it? Chopper asked curiously. A silent atmosphere had been created among the crew members thinking about what they heard, and it was Chopper who broke this atmosphere with an innocent question. Mary Joyce. You don't know where Mary Joyce is? It's the world government's city. Usopp yelled at Chopper, crying. Luffy. What are you doing? Nami started to cry desperately. This is super problematic. Frankie spoke in desperation, but striking a pose. Rage let her cigarette fall from her mouth as she looked dazed. He really did that. Hugo appeared paralyzed. Nay. Did he send a meteor to Mary Joyce? Ecchi seemed so scared that he turned white. While Robin, Nojiko, Yuta, Vivi, Kuina had their mouths open in shock, Lami, Zoro had their brows furrowed, and Shirahoshi, Baby 5, Yamato, and all the animals seemed oblivious to it. The music had ended as had all the celebration, and everyone looked at Luffy in shock. Then a specific group of crew members quickly started running towards Luffy, who was surprised with a bunch of his group behind him begging him. Chopper, Nami, Lami, Ecchi, Yuta, Vivi, Zoro, Kuina, Frankie, Usopp began to speak in desperation with many crying tears in their eyes. Luffy, this is very serious. They will never forgive us for this. Chopper, with tears in his eyes, completely terrified after discovering from Usopp what attacking that city meant. Do you know what it means to attack Mary Joyce, right? We're finished. Nami, crying, holding Luffy by the shoulders, desperate. Luffy, this is insanity. Why would you do something like this? Lami had white eyes and sharp teeth, angry at Luffy. Captain, this was too much. Even for us. Ecchi, with a pure shock expression, all his hands trembling. This is crazy. You think it's going to be okay? Send the meteor back. Yuta, crying, her voice full of panic and fear. Luffy, please tell me you have a plan to get us out of this. Vivi, sobbing, very worried about what would happen. What were you thinking, Luffy? This is going to bring us trouble like we've never seen before. Zoro, frowning, serious and concerned. I can't believe you did this, Luffy. Stop the meteor. Kuina, with tears in her eyes, looking for some hope in Luffy's answer. This is not super at all. It's a total disaster. Frankie, clearly shaken, hands on his head in despair. Luffy, this will draw every possible enemy against us. Usopp, crying uncontrollably, already imagining the worst scenarios. What is this? Don't bother me when I'm in the middle of a negotiation right now. Luffy looked at his companions a bit confused. How do you call this a negotiation? Everyone screamed at the same time, making faces. Luffy sighed. You're bothering me. I'll talk to you later. Luffy returned to speaking, but his tone was quite serious, making everyone swallow hard, seeing that their captain did not want conversations and they returned to the deck lost. After all, Luffy had not finished the conversation with the 5 elders. He turned his attention to the sky after seeing his crew walking away while murmuring. It really was worth seeing. Luffy commented, looking as the meteor cut the horizon, lighting up the entire sea towards its end, where Mary Joyce was. Now, how will you deal with this, world government? Luffy commented with an arrogant smile. The 5 elders looked at the meteor flying towards the city through the window, even with anger at that and frowning, none of them seemed really worried. They also didn't care about 7 people appearing in the room of power, kneeling to all of them. These 7 people, all wearing astronaut suits, were not just Tenri Obitos but also known as the most powerful sacred knights, the hidden power to destroy the government's enemies and protect the Holy Land. All remained kneeling in silence before the 5 elders who were still looking out the window. You see what's happening, don't you? The voice of Topman Warcurry cut through the silence, severe and calm, addressing the kneeling ones. Yes, Goro says. An attack against the gods of this world. An act of defiance that we cannot ignore," replied the leader of the Sacred Knights, without raising his head, his voice full of restrained authority. "This meteor. A direct provocation. Monkey D. Luffy has crossed all boundaries," commented Ethan Joe. "You." Shepherd Jupiter turned to the 7 people. "Destroy it without waking our sovereign." "As you wish." They all spoke together and disappeared. All the Sacred Knights watched the gigantic ball of light approaching the city as it loomed large. The city was in despair as the Tenri Obitos either ran or demanded their slaves to quicken their pace, trying to hide in their bunkers quickly. "Who's going to get rid of it?" Saint Venus spoke with a bored voice. "Saint Mars, take care of it, and Saint Jupiter, assist him." The leader, Saint Uranus, spoke with a severe and slow tone. "Yes." Saint Mars said, leaping into the air with such speed that no one with common eyes could follow. An explosion occurred in the sky above Mary Jo eyes as Saint Mars blasted through the air with his high-speed moonwalk towards the bright meteor in front of him. He quickly entered the flame field of the rock and seemed unfazed by it as he burst that part of the meteor by punching it at that moment. However, the meteor didn't explode as it would from any other Sacred Knight's punch, but an unexpected transformation occurred. The impact of the attack resulted in its sudden and surprising metamorphosis. The meteor began to disintegrate, not into pieces of rock or space dust, but into thousands of small cubes, shining with light as they detached from the main body as a whole, now forming fire cubes flying towards Mary Jo eyes with the power of his devil fruit, without even needing to use hockey. Saint Mars looked satisfied at that while appearing behind the flaming cubes the size of a house in equal sizes. "Reduced it enough for you to move it," he said while waiting for Saint Jupiter to do the rest. As he watched, the feminine figure of Saint Jupiter placed her hand on her hip watching those cubes coming towards them. "Leaving the rest to me, as always," she complained, even as it was an order from their leader. Her voice carried a slight tone of reproach. She observed the floating cubes with a critical gaze, before acting. With a theatrical sigh, she raised an elegant finger, and the space around the cubes seemed to distort, as if the reality around them was being bent by her will. Her devil fruit had a unique and mysterious ability, an ability that allowed her to manipulate the space around her in ways impossible for the common mind. Under her command, the cubes that floated inertly in the sky began to move, forming a complex pattern. They distorted as if that physical field did the same, following the direction indicated by her finger as she lowered it. Moving now like a current, they bent and went towards the mountain's ground without losing speed. It was as if they were going in the same path, but the distortion in space made them follow the front changed by the power of that devil fruit. The thousands of cubes began to fall towards the sea, below the great mountain. She just nodded satisfied while Saint Mars landed alongside all the Sacred Knights. "What shall we do now?" Saint Jupiter asked after seeing the last cube disappearing among the clouds below, despite still seeing them lighting up the place as they caught fire. "We will stay waiting for any other attacks until the 5 elders decide to give new orders." Saint Uranus spoke and everyone nodded, while the other Sacred Knights helped organize the chaos created in the city, as many Tenri Obitos wanted to know who sent that meteor. They dealt with it easily. Marcus Mars spoke with a neutral tone, but a sharp look. "But we still have to deal with this pirate." Shepherd Jupiter commented with some frustration at the audacity of it. "Let's see what he wants, after proving that he is more dangerous than we thought." Jaga Ursha Saturn spoke, returning to the communicator waiting for them, yet keeping the same smile. Chapter 247, News 01. The 5 elders returned to the sofa while the Den Mushi was still on the line. "So, you easily dealt with the meteor, as expected," Luffy said calmly. "You really think that can destroy Mary Jo eyes?" Topman Warcurry spoke, but with a bit of anger after what this pirate did. "Well, you deal with one, but what if I send a few dozen of them?" Luffy asked calmly. "Damn, you think you're going to live long?" Ethan Jiro exclaimed. "Calm down, surely you wouldn't want a meteor shower falling on the city. Say what you want, you know you won't live long if it stays like this, but we also don't want to deal with something like that." Marcus Mars spoke, stroking his long beard. "What I want is a peace pact. You do not get involved with any of the islands of my companion's origins. In exchange, I won't send meteors to Mary Jo eyes." Luffy spoke, as this was a deal he wanted to make on this call, not wanting to worry too much about having to deal with the government sending troops to the kingdoms of Goa, Orange Town, Syrup Village, Barati, Kokoyasi Village, Shimatsuki Village, Whiskey Peak, Drum Island, Alabasta, and Water 7. He had more territories, but they were hidden from the eyes of the world government. Shepherd Jupiter pondered for a moment. "We can make this deal, as long as you send no more meteors. We will not bother with the islands, even though you killed a Tenri Obito, but that does not mean we won't kill you," he concluded. "That's good. After all, I am a pirate, danger is always by my side, and I like facing big challenges, so as long as you keep your end of the deal, I will keep mine." Luffy was sincere. He knew he couldn't be without the government on his neck after everything he did, so having the people behind him protected would be a relief. Everything in the place had become silent and Luffy wanted to end their conversation. I think we're done here, hope we can meet one day, goodbye. Luffy spoke and hung up the snail. Catcha this kid. He really did it. Jaga Ursha Saturn spoke with dissatisfaction. We can't do anything with him for now. Topman Warcurry said calmly. For now. After all, we can still destroy them in this war. Ethan Burn Venus Jiro spoke. However, we will have to leave a good force here. We will have to send a limited force to assist the Navy. Marcus Mars spoke. Meanwhile, at sea. Luffy looked at the turned-off Dendenmushi and shrugged as he threw it into the sea and looked at a still trembling Bippo. Hey, don't be like that, it's over. It all worked out. Luffy said with a smile. But Captain, we launched a meteor on Mary Joyce. The government will never forgive us. Bippo exclaimed, still frightened. Don't worry about it now, let's return to the others. Luffy spoke. Then, he started walking back to the deck where his crew was waiting for him, trembling and looking scared, still wondering what Luffy was doing, becoming the government's #1 enemy. Luffy, you want to surpass your father? Kuina complained. Luffy, are we really okay? Won't we be chased to the ends of the earth? Nami cried. Luffy, this is no joke. Vivi spoke worriedly. Luffy, do you really know what you're doing? Robin asked with a frown. Luffy, can you launch another shooting star? It was so beautiful. Shirahoshi exclaimed, wanting to see another light show in the sky. Of course not. Half of the crew shouted at her, making comical faces. Ha 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 ha. Luffy laughed, looking at everyone while he stopped laughing but kept a smile. Don't worry, it's alright. He said. This was just a negotiation, and I showed that if the government exaggerates in chasing us, well, that's what will happen. Luffy commented, while everyone still looked suspicious of him. Does it have to be so extreme, Luffy? Nojiko asked. Yes, otherwise it would be our islands destroyed with our relatives being kidnapped or hit us. I bet no one here would like something like that, right? He asked while everyone looked thoughtful. The government will surely do something like that, you have no idea what they can do to get revenge. Hugo was the one who spoke, knowing very well what he had gone through because of Atenri Obito. But I never imagined you would send a meteor to their city to show you're not joking. Hugo spoke, even having seen Luffy kill Atenri Obito in front of him. The meteor was Bippo, I just asked for it. Luffy smiled. But you sent me. I swear it was the captain's orders. I'm sorry. Bippo started to panic, apologizing to the group. Haha. Don't be so scared, I take full responsibility, Bippo. Luffy said and looked back at the group. While the vast majority were still scared, there were some who didn't seem to care, like Yamato eating her meal and Shirahoshi seeming oblivious to the gravity as the animals that didn't seem to care much about their actions. Well, anyway, let's continue the feast. Luffy said, being one of the calmest and most excited in the place, sat next to his horned wife to eat with her. The night passed in a divided atmosphere, while Luffy and Yamato laughed as they ate with each other. The rest of the crew, a bit calmer, joined, but the atmosphere was not the same anymore. Anyway, the night went by as the crew went to sleep in the early morning. Now let's take this ship. Luffy approached Sunny Go alongside Black Pearl and shrunk it to put in his collection of miniature ships. As he returned to the room, Luffy ended up spending the night with Alvida and a drunk Yamato in his bed. The next day, the ship continued sailing its course that Luffy set with Nami, and a newspaper delivery seagull approached and Yuta bought a newspaper. Thank you, she said, and the bird nodded before flying away. Let's see. We're on the front page of the newspaper. Yuta exclaimed, and Luffy, who was sitting on the edge of the ship, approached his woman with the newspaper. Let me see. I wonder how Morgans knew about our battle. Luffy said, unaware that Morgans was many kilometers above Eni's lobby. The news would generate a new impact on the world with some images that Morgans managed to send to his office before Kuzen took his recorder. He published the shocking news of the Straw Hat crew against the great force of the Navy, with the destruction of Eni's lobby as a result of the conflict. The news about the conflict in Eni's lobby and the mysterious phenomenon in the sky of a meteor occupied most of the main page, detailed in black letters with images below. Luffy looked at the newspaper with a big smile, drawing the attention of everyone in the crew. Look at this, he exclaimed, starting to read aloud. Devastating conflict in Eni's lobby. Pirates challenge justice and escape after unprecedented destruction. His voice echoed across the deck. Everyone stopping what they were doing to listen to Luffy. As the captain continued reading the details of the battle, the Straw Hat crew gathered closer. A large force tried to combat the Straw Hats in Monkey D. Luffy, joining against a vice admiral and 2 admirals. A fight was waged, which resulted in the total destruction of Inai's lobby. One of the three great structures of the world government is submerged in the sea. With this, the government and the navy are seeing how they can end once and for all with this super rookie, who was considered the worst pirate that emerged during the era of pirates. Further down, another article captured attention. Meteor illuminates the sky of the Grand Line, natural phenomenon or calculated threat? The report detailed the sudden appearance of a meteor that crossed the sky on a clear night, its trajectory illuminating the darkness before disappearing on the horizon. Speculations were rife among scientists and sky observers, some suggesting a rare natural anomaly, while others insinuated a more sinister origin, possibly being caused by a powerful devil fruit user, but no further details were given. Images captured by witnesses showed the fireball tearing through the sky, leaving a trail of light and fire. Nobody managed to give their opinion before Luffy showed other sheets that came with the newspaper. "Hey, look at this," he said, showing the posters in hand. "Looks like we've become even more famous." Soon the posters were placed in front of the group, leaving everyone stunned as they looked at their own bounties. Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat, 1 billion Baileys, alive only. Yamato, Kaido's daughter, 600 million Baileys, dead or alive. Roronoa Zoro, the Swordsman of Darkness, 200 million Baileys, dead or alive. Trafalgar D. Lamy, the Surgeon of Death, 300 million Baileys, alive only. Vinsmoke Ragel, the Red Phoenix, 200 million Baileys, alive only. Nami, the Angel, 100 million Baileys, dead or alive. Nojiko, the Bomb Woman, 100 million Baileys, dead or alive. Kuina, the Ice Swordsman, 100 million Baileys, dead or alive. Alvida, the Ruthless, 100 million Baileys, dead or alive. Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta, 150 million Baileys, dead or alive. Hugo, the Titan, 200 million Baileys, dead or alive. Chaochu, the Guard Dog, 150 million Baileys, dead or alive. Shirahoshi, the Mermaid, 5 million Baileys, dead or alive. Vippo, the Bear, 30 million Baileys, dead or alive. Usopp, 25 million Baileys, dead or alive. Hucky, the Six-Armed Fishman, 30 million Baileys, dead or alive. Nico Robin, the Demon Child, 120 million Baileys, dead or alive. Tony Chopper, the Cotton Candy Lover, 5 Baileys, dead or alive. Laboon, 5 Baileys, dead or alive. Crew, 5 Baileys, dead or alive. Megalo, 5 Baileys, dead or alive. Enel, 200 million Baileys, dead or alive. Yuta, the Singer, 20 million Baileys, dead or alive. Frankie, the Cyborg, 10 million Baileys, dead or alive. Chapter 248, News 02. The news of the shocking events quickly swept the world. The meteor in the sky certainly caught attention, but the new posters of the Straw Hats were the most talked about worldwide. "Did you hear the news about those pirates from the East Blue?" said a citizen. "No, I haven't even seen the newspapers yet," the man said, scratching his head. "You should see, they outdid themselves," the man insisted. "What did those Straw Hats do this time? They really are terrifying wherever they go," the first man said, who was shocked as soon as he saw the newspaper. "How is it possible? They fought against 2 admirals and still escaped?" the man shouted incredulously. "There were more than 2 admirals, you idiot. 11 vice-admirals. They faced 20,000 Navy soldiers," the man shouted at the other, highlighting the seriousness of this news. "Who can stop them?" the second murmured with some fear. "I don't know, but we're certainly safe here in the South Blue," he said. "And the rumors of what I heard in Elegia? Many claim that the captain himself was transformed into his beast while destroying half of the island," the man said. "I don't know. But he's certainly gone, and let's hope that demon doesn't come back," he said. In another blue, people were celebrating in a tavern. "Ha ha ha ha. Look how unbeatable he is," said the villagers of Fuusha village. "Long live Luffy," another shouted. "The boy really deserves it, he's always been hardworking. Fighting against 2 admirals at the same time? Could you have imagined that coming from that boy? He really is incredible." People laughed and had fun while Luffy and his latest adventure were celebrated by the village, as a symbol for everyone there, where there was a lot of pride. After all, it was as if Luffy was wearing the village's jersey. "My queen, stop serving the people. This does not suit your status," shouted a noble who was one of the ministers while being horrified with the queen serving everyone at the bar, while the citizens didn't even care about having a waitress wearing a crown while entering drinks. "It's okay, today is a day off that I'm giving to everyone. Let's celebrate Luffy's latest feats," she said with a sweet smile. "You can't give us the day off, my queen. The kingdom can't just stop functioning, you must return to the palace," the man exclaimed with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, in a corner, Didon and Whoop Slap were in a corner of the place drinking. Damn Luffy. He's shaming the village, I mean, the kingdom. Whoop Slap complained. Damn Luffy, I had such a good life in the mountains, now I'm here full of chores with this kingdom, which I don't even like. Didon complained. Meanwhile, in Kokoyasi village, the place was becoming a huge port city as Luffy had predicted, and trade had started a short time ago, and boats began to arrive from all sides of the East Blue as the city still expanded with new constructions. In the bustling city, people talked cheerfully about the news from the newspapers, while in a huge mansion in the city, a man seemed in a bad mood. That damn pirate, how did he let the sisters get to have 100 million on their heads each? He corrupted them. The man exclaimed. Mayor, but why do you seem so happy? Said an assistant next to him, seeing all the complaint of the man, but certainly his face does not match his words. I am not happy. The man shouted back, trying to hide his blushing face. In Orange Town, the mayor seemed to have the same temperament. Chao didn't increase his bounty. But still. How can a dog have a bounty of 100 million? What did you do, Chao? The man shouted, unaware of the real power of the dog. In Syrup Village. Usopp didn't receive any bounty. Kaya murmured, looking at the newspaper. They did something very big, but Usopp didn't seem to be on the island while the conflict was happening. Mary commented. In Shimatsuki Village, the atmosphere was also festive as a group of enthusiastic sword students were filling the dojo of the master, Shimatsuki Kaoshiru. Master. Look at this. The apprentices showed the newspaper to the master. Kuina. Zoro. He murmured, looking at the two posters of most interest to him. Kuina with a bounty of 100 million and Zoro with 200 million. Another I want to be like Zoro-senpai when I grow up. As the youngsters continued to exclaim, in the middle of the sea, at Barity, there was a great party in the kitchen. Did you see Reiju? She looks amazing and intimidating on her poster. Exclaimed a cook. Incredible. She certainly has new powers now. How did she get that? Another murmured, looking at the poster. A devil fruit. Zeph said thoughtfully. But I thought the phoenix had already been eaten by one of the members of the strongest crew in the world. How can there be another red phoenix? He said, murmuring, but then shrugged. Anyway, this is good for the girl, I hope she doesn't cause trouble for us. He couldn't help but comment, but certainly had a certain pride saying it. Heading to the Grand Line, in Whiskey Peak, a man danced in his extravagant clothes. It's amazing. Luffy-chan is so cool. Bachan yelled around the place, like him. Everyone from the former Baroque works was scattered trying to raise the organization again. Bachan came to Whiskey Peak to organize the place while the others spread across the local islands. Vivi. How could you become a criminal with 100 million? Igaram exclaimed, he couldn't help crying either. I was supposed to be protecting her. How can this be happening? He said with tears. Igaram had been in Whiskey Peak since Luffy took over the place, working to create alcohol factories while he began to distribute them to allied kingdoms with a lower tax and sold to other kingdoms at the beginning of the Grand Line. In Alabasta itself. Kaya ha 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 ha. My husband is amazing. Makita laughed like a madwoman looking at the newspaper. She was in the throne room. Since they came as allies of Luffy, they had to protect Vivi's father and gather the organization again under the flag of the Straw Hats. Vivi. Cobra murmured, seeing his daughter in the newspaper with such a bounty after the chaos they made. But he just hoped his daughter was safe, even knowing that the government would be more aggressive than ever. In the Drum Kingdom. A woman looked at the newspaper with her coat flapping against the snow falling. Chopper, your bounty doesn't seem to change ever. She murmured and looked at the island in transformation with the new king. On the other sides of the Grand Line, the mayor could hardly believe what he was seeing in the newspaper. They really did it. He murmured, but also felt relieved that he got rid of the Cypher Pal 9 agents who had been with him for years without him suspecting. Elsewhere. You must go to Thriller Bark and ask Moria not to conflict with those pirates. If they reach him, it's very likely that he will die in the fight. A voice spoke on the Den Mushi. The big man, known as Kuma, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, heard and nodded with a voice almost without emotion. Yes. He said before using the pawpaw fruit on himself and disappearing, flying towards the Florian Triangle. Look at your father in the newspaper. On a ship with 2 snakes navigating the waters, Hancock complained while showing the newspaper in front of her bare belly as she nuzzled the area with affection. Your father is so amazing. He can already fight against 2 admirals. She said with a feeling of pride and love, but soon felt anger. Those admirals. They think they can get away after unfairly fighting my husband? She exclaimed, wanting revenge. Her sisters were outside the door, while exchanging looks and just sighing with Hancock's constant change of temperament. In a bar, Rayleigh woke up that morning, thinking about seeing the news of the meteor that changed course and fell at the foot of the Red Mountain. I guess there's more interesting news than what we saw in the sky. Shakayaku said, smoking a cigarette while dragging the newspaper to the man. This. They really did it. Really couldn't help being surprised by what was in the newspaper. At the bottom of the sea. Dad. News from Shira. One of King Neptune's sons exclaimed with the new newspapers picked up on the surface a few hours before. In the newspaper was the news of the conflict in Anai's lobby. Where is my Shira? Neptune asked, looking for his daughter in the pages and images. We don't know, there's a photo with her arriving on the ship, but she disappeared and there were no more images or mentions of her beyond a sea snake. Fukaboshi said. I want my daughter back. Why do Jinbai and Whitebeard still insist on leaving her with that bunch of pirates? Neptune exclaimed. Meanwhile, in the North Blue. So. Reiju has a phoenix fruit. Vinsmoke Ecchi said, looking at the newspaper cautiously. She doesn't seem to be a failed experiment after all. Vinsmoke Judge said thoughtfully. In the end, she might be useful, that's why I talked to my contacts to have her a special condition on her wanted poster. He spoke calmly. What should we do, father? Vinsmoke Nijai spoke, wanting to know what he plans to do with their long-lost sister. Let's go to the Grand Line, let's chase them, and Big Mom has contacted me. We have a deal to fulfill with her. He spoke calmly and all his children nodded. The Swordsman of Darkness. This seems to be interesting. Mihawk was sailing through the waters calmly while looking at the news with quite an interest, especially about Zoro's new title. You are certainly growing so fast that you might become a challenge, my sword eagerly awaits that. He finished his thoughts while continuing to sail. Meanwhile, in the New World, the news reached a Vice Admiral of G5. How can they let this happen to Joker? Virgo seemed furious with his colleagues for not being able to protect the man to whom he was loyal. He had already received the new reports of the fight and how Doflamingo was after the fight. He was not summoned for the war that will happen in Manaford because the Navy needed to have competent people to protect the New World while the war started. I want revenge, I swear I do, but I cannot ignore this information. He murmured, knowing he should inform Kaido about Ace's capture and about the conflict that will happen maybe next week. Kaido was preparing to go after his daughter at this time, but Virgo knew he might regret if he didn't inform about the conflict, which would have to make them wait to attack the Straw Hats. Let's do this then. Virgo murmured as he prepared his Dendenmushi to call King, who was with Kaido in Onigashima. Chapter 249, News 03. As news spread across the four corners of the world, the New World was no exception. This sea was the territory where the worst pirates lived, and the news of a newcomer fighting against vice admirals, without even arriving in these waters, was quite alarming to all the major forces and even independent pirates. In Dressrosa, the chaos was even greater. After all, the pirates of the Don Quixote group soon discovered the state of their captain, imprisoned in Manaford, lying in a bed in a coma, with even incurable injuries. The family was gathered in the castle except for a few members, while they fiercely discussed with one another. How can they do this to Doflamingo? Questioned Pika, one of the family members, angrily as his voice was thin. What are we going to do now? The Navy doesn't want to take him out of there, for some reason. Treble spoke with snot coming out of his nose. We should keep calm. Everything will be alright, no matter what happens. Diamandi spoke with firmness in his voice. Even so, how are we going to run the country without Joker? What if the rebels rebel? Dellinger asked worriedly. Let's try to keep any chaos at bay. After all, most of the country is loyal to the King of Dressrosa. That hasn't changed. Let's just hope he gets well and we can't take revenge on that group of pirates who did such a thing. Diamandi spoke again, maintaining his calm. Do you really think we can fight against a group that did this to Doflamingo? Senor Pink spoke. No matter what happens, we will take our revenge. Pika exclaimed. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, in the Colosseum, two women were meeting, while commenting on the events with each other. Is it true that Doflamingo is seriously injured and even at risk of dying while in a coma? Rebecca, dressed as a gladiator, asked, surprised to the newspaper as her gaze returned to her aunt. I don't have much information about it, besides what some family members commented while I was leaving. And there's nothing in the newspapers that proves his current state. However, he really suffered a defeat. First, he was captured and then humiliated in a way I never imagined could happen. Violet spoke, looking at the newspapers, searching for any other information. Are we finally going to get rid of him? Rebecca asked with hope. I don't know, but he certainly never suffered so much in his life. A small satisfaction after everything he did to us. I'm so happy about this. Violet admitted, after all, she always wanted to end Joker, and seeing him being destroyed was one of the best things that happened in all 6 years. She picked up the newspaper and saw the photo of the pirate responsible for this, wanting to meet him. After all, not everyone could fight against Doflamingo, but this man, this newcomer at sea, had gone against all common expectations. Meanwhile, the underworld was in chaos. Without their boss, behind the command, the Don Quixote family was still trying to maintain control over all places, trying to fulfill all the agreements of selling weapons, drugs, and human trafficking, having a lot of difficulty in keeping everything under control. On another island, where there had not been any incident of two admirals fighting, Caesar Clown was doing some tests with his assistant trying to create smiles. This project was born with Doflamingo in an agreement with Kaido, one of the four emperors. Caesar Clown had stolen this project from an experiment conducted 2 years ago. He still remembers the incident very well. He was at a testing site with Vegapunk, who was attempting to create a specific thing at this location, an artificial devil fruit, but not just any fruit. This one was crafted using Kaido's genes after collecting them during one of his captures, thereby trying to create a dragon with this artificial devil fruit. After years of research, the fruit was finally constructed, and both Vegapunk and his second-in-command, Caesar Clown, were looking at the small pink fruit emerging from the oven, appearing in front of them with the metallic sound of doors opening. Finally, Vegapunk sighed. After years of being funded by the government to create this fruit, we have finally completed our work. He commented as he approached the fruit. But it was supposed to be blue, why pink? He couldn't help asking with disappointment. Caesar Clown watched with jealousy. After all, it wasn't he who made it, but rather his rival in the field of science, yet he kept calm and waited for Vegapunk to finish analyzing all aspects of the fruit. The big-headed man began, analyzing the data and conducting tests with the scanning machine. The fruit is a failure. He finally admitted, with a tone of frustration. After all the resources and my time that had been dedicated on this island to create this fruit, in the end, it was a failure. He murmured. Ha, 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 you're not as smart as you hoped. Caesar Clown exclaimed, laughing slowly, while he, not caring about his assistant, already familiar with her personality, continued looking disappointedly at the pink fruit. It seems you're not so smart after all, aren't you? It's a failure. You made a failure. Caesar Clown began to mock. The government won't like to hear this. Vegapunk said in the end, and looked at Caesar Clown. Since the fruit is good for nothing, throw it away. I'll talk to the 5 elders now. He simply said and turned away. Caesar Clown was thrilled by this, as he picked up the fruit and placed it in a box, proudly labeling it Vegapunk's failure. He wouldn't throw it away but would keep it in his room as a trophy. He failed, but I will make a better one. He commented as he began to walk with the fruit. He secretly took all the research data, ready to try to prove that he would make better artificial fruits. I have the data, it's better to throw this away, otherwise it will bring me bad luck. Caesar Clown commented, changing his mind about keeping the fruit, then went to the garbage dump. He arrived at the site and simply threw the fruit there, saying, "Goodbye, Vegapunk's failure. You finally showed me that he makes mistakes," he said, excitedly. Now I need to look for more of his mistakes, he said, with a personality that insists on not wanting to lose to his rival. Sometime later, with Caesar insisting on searching, he had a falling out with Vegapunk and activated a poisonous gas across the entire island, making it uninhabited in the current time. Now Caesar Clown was pondering what to do next, especially since he had heard about Doflamingo's situation and was hoping he would recover soon, because without Joker's protection, his life wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, in Onigashima, Kaido was preparing his army to head to Paradise, as he had to rescue his daughter, his subordinate, and capture a bunch of mystical beasts for that crew, which he wanted more than anything. Now, even Smile was not comparable to those monsters he saw in the newspapers. He was about to try to tame them with all his strength. He had returned, after King convinced him to come back. After all, he took the wrong path and spent a month wandering the new world, unable to return, even entering some of the blues, while King went after him. Now, he was already preparing a large army. Men, be prepared for a war that will happen in Paradise against that pirate band. Soon, they will feel the strength of the beast pirates. He spoke, as the crowd began to shout, "Let's face them. Let's finish them. How dare they attack the beast pirates?" They screamed. This was the speech from the day before. Now, the image of Luffy and his daughter emblazoned in the newspapers caught his attention that morning, making him look at it incredulously. In a way, not that he was afraid of the Straw Hats or anything, but he was certainly quite impressed with the current strength of the crew. These kids are getting stronger and stronger. I'm proud of you, Yamato. It looks like you've finally taken after your father. He began to cry as he saw in the newspaper the photo of his daughter with a bounty of 600 million, while she was fighting against 2 vice admirals. This was an impressive feat for him, hoping that she would take over Wano one day. Let's head to Paradise. Let's take this crew for ourselves. He spoke, as the 2 disasters and the Tobirapa were gathered in front of him, some curious, others angry about Luffy's deeds, After all, the crew had achieved many bounties above 100 million baileys, without even setting foot in the New World. However, King's phone started ringing at that moment. He saw that it was Virgo calling, a vice admiral who worked for Don Quixote da Flamengo as a Navy spy. He thought for a moment before answering, but eventually accepted, going to a corner. He listened to everything, frowning even more. Then, he returned to Kaido. "Boss Kaido." He spoke, drawing Kaido's attention, still crying over the newspaper. "What is it, King?" He turned to his disaster. "Urgent news, Boss Kaido." He spoke. "There will be a war between the Whitebeards and the Navy next week." Kaido immediately looked at King, stunned. "A war?" he asked. "A war against the Navy. The old man is going to do that?" "Yes." King responded, already envisioning the inevitable outcome. "It seems the Navy has his second-in-command in their hands and intend to carry out a public execution, according to Virgo." "I see. That old man will surely not let this happen." Kaido spoke, stopping his tears. Now he was in a dilemma, whether to face the Straw Hats or take advantage of the chaos in the New World with the departure and possible death of Whitebeard. "It seems we have no choice." Kaido spoke. "Change of plan," he shouted, as an even more serious situation had arisen. "Wait a minute, brother," Ulti asked angrily, even speaking to Kaido in such a manner. Kaido didn't mind and simply answered her, "Don't worry, we'll do that later. For now, there's a chance for us to grab more territories for ourselves. And we'll also attack Whitebeard," he declared, as everyone present felt except for Ulti, who is still dissatisfied. Chapter 250, News 04. As Kaido prepared to face Whitebeard, on the other side of the same sea, there was a giant woman devouring her sweets, and as she waited eagerly, a subordinate began reading the newspaper. "Come on, read. I'm already losing my patience," said Big Mom, dissatisfied, as the man trembled in fear. He picked up the newspaper, shaking, and began to read in front of the entire Charlotte family, gathered around the place. As he read the news, the family had a varied reaction. Some frowned, while others maintained a neutral look. Some were restless with what they heard. Since this pirate group was in their sights as soon as they arrived in the New World, and they would have to engage in a battle between them. Big Mom frowned as soon as the subordinate looked up and was cautiously looking at her. "Are you saying that kid is on this level? What will they think of us, emperors, when Ecchi is facing admirals, while we are just taking care of territories?" Big Mom growled, as the man trembled and, before he could react, Big Mom unleashed her anger on the man, devouring his soul without him being able to react. The man fell dead to the ground while no one reacted to this, being a common situation among the family. Even her children were not immune to her wrath when she got angry, killing many of them over the years. "Damn that Kaido, that bastard, he's already given his daughter to this rookie. However, we can still take something for ourselves. In fact, there's someone on that German ship that I have been in contact with and intend to have that person." She spoke with a bit of anger. The atmosphere remained as she returned to eating her sweets to quell her bad mood and her ensuring that she did not go mad. Meanwhile, elsewhere, on a ship in the middle of the sea, Marco picked up the newspaper that day from a carrier seagull, and as soon as he saw the news, he was entirely shocked by it, staying planted in place while other members of the boat noticed his strange behavior. "Marco, why are you like this? What's in the newspaper?" The commander of the 5th Division, the Floral Swordsman Vista, asked, curious, seeing the reaction of the 1st Division commander. Marco noticed the commander of the 3rd Division, Diamond Jazu, of the 6th Division, Blomenko, and of the 8th Division, Namur, also approaching, curious to know what was in the newspaper that day. There could be some news of Ace. Meanwhile, Whitebeard was sitting in his chair in the middle of the deck, looking patiently at the sea, feeling that something bad was happening in his intuition, and his heart seemed to weigh with that feeling, but still unable to guess what it meant, just with a bad feeling and a bitter taste in his mouth. He looked at Marco with a newspaper, waiting to see if he could find out if the feeling was coming from that newspaper. "Marco, what is it?" he asked calmly. Marco seemed to come out of his daze looking around and seeing his companions waiting for him to announce what was in the newspaper, but he approached the middle of the ship, ignoring all the other commanders. He took the newspaper going straight to Whitebeard. "Father," Marco started, with a voice that did not know how he would continue his sentence. "The news is shocking, something big happened in paradise," he murmured. "What is it, Marco?" Whitebeard spoke curiously. "It's about Ace's brother, and he has outdone himself this time. Look for yourself," Marco said, placing the newspaper in front of him and showing it to Whitebeard, who was looking in the distance, making him open his eyes at that. "Ace's brother did this?" he murmured, he said with a thoughtful expression as he narrowed his eyes while everyone waited to see his next reaction, even not knowing the news that Marco had not yet shown. As the whole ship was in silence with dozens of eyes looking at the strongest man in the world, his reaction was quite iconic, because he began to laugh the next moment. Gorrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr and looking at the photo of Straw Hat and his crew. There's never been a rookie like him before. Whitebeard had to admit. It seems like times are about to change soon. He murmured, cracking his characteristic smile, while the others listened, quite confused. For Newgate, he recognized that he was old and knew that his time would not last much longer. Nor were the other 4 emperors so young, with the exception of Shanks, and the emergence of such a powerful crew now, that had not even set foot in the New World, should be the announcement of a new era. He had to admit, but he was happy that, at least, this was Ace's brother, someone who could easily create a connection with his crew. Perhaps, after his death, there would still be a strong alliance. Whitebeard always thought about the future of his children like any loving father, and he still sought who would inherit his will after his death, which approached every day. His body could no longer hold up, he was no longer young. Waiting for a strong ally was the best possible thing. After all, none of his members could come close to his current strength to protect their territories. "What is it, Marco?" "Let me see. Is this Ace's brother?" asked one of the commanders who attacked at that moment, wanting to see what was so special in the newspaper. As the newspaper was finally seen by everyone, numerous reactions came from them. "What? He fought against 2 admirals and destroyed one of the 3 great government structures?" exclaimed one of the commanders. "An admiral really did this?" questioned another commander. "He never said he was that strong. And to think that he's already at this level in paradise, and must be coming to the New World right now. I wonder what will happen soon," said another, looking curious as everyone gathered to see. "Today his bounty is 1 billion. Have you ever seen a rookie with such a bounty?" said another, exclaiming to his companions. While no one could respond, he continued, "Will they be friends or foes?" "Don't be silly, he's Ace's brother, of course, he'll be our ally," said another. "Look at this Rachel. She has the same fruit as Marco," one exclaimed with one of the posters. "That should be impossible." Marco couldn't help but exclaim. "This crew is filled with powerful devil fruits. What will happen in the future?" Someone murmured. "The New World is going to change." Whitebeard spoke for the first time after a while, making everyone look at him. "The world is changing. A new era is coming. Someone so powerful emerging, with a crew also so strong, even having Kaido's daughter as his vice captain, is really incredible. Maybe this is the man you were waiting for, Roger? The man who will challenge the entire world." Whitebeard said the last part, looking up at the sky, thinking about the old rival. Elsewhere in the New World, Shanks was looking at the newspaper. He really did it. How did he become so strong? Meanwhile, the entire crew looked around him, with most having incredulous looks. Having known about the boy's existence many years ago, they couldn't help but be all amazed by this. In the end, he faced 2 admirals and still came out alive and escaped. It may not have been a victory, but certainly something extraordinary for a rookie who entered the sea less than a year ago and hadn't even entered the New World to face the real sea of pirates. And to think that he's this strong. Can anyone stop him at this pace? Said Lucky Roo, biting into his meat. "Pretty soon we'll meet them, won't we?" asked Lime Juice to Shanks. "My son is with them. It's a shame he didn't participate in the fight. Still, I'm sure that we'll meet soon," said Yesop. While the red-haired pirate's crew commented with a Shanks looking dazedly at the newspaper, Ben Beckman approached the pile of bounties of the crew, going through one by one until he found a poster that made his cigar fall from his mouth. "Well, you won't be the only one finding a child here," Ben Beckman started, still with a dazed face, handing the poster to Shanks, making his captain shift his bewildered gaze from Luffy to an even more startled one, even dropping the newspaper. After all, the poster showed a specific member of the Straw Hat crew, one of the newest. She really is. With Luffy? Shanks murmured in disbelief, feeling a whirlwind of emotions inside him, while everyone else seemed quite shocked by it as well. After all, they all had shared many years with that little girl more than 10 years ago, and now she was back at sea again, and on a pirate crew that would soon arrive in the New World, which made them quite cautious, not knowing how to react to their encounter. After all, they had practically abandoned her with a broken heart, wondering how that little girl had suffered because of it. "Shanks, are you okay?" asked Ben Beckman, looking at Shanks. "I am, it's just that I don't know if I can face her." He spoke with a melancholic tone. There had been only 2 times in his life that Shanks had cried, once at the death of his captain at Logtown's execution square, and once for leaving his daughter behind. Now, one of those holes left in his story was coming here, and he did not know how to react to interest with the girl. But still, there was a feeling of pride, allowing a smile to appear on his face despite the emotions he felt. It seems that Yuta has met with Luffy, and Luffy has placed her under his flag, and she looks sad in the poster. She always said she hated pirates above all and hated war, but she's on a pirate ship. Shanks looked up with some glimmer emerging from his eyes, wondering what will happen when they meet again. And that day was getting sooner, with Luffy becoming so powerful and unstoppable that it wouldn't be long before he reached his level at this pace. On another island, in a specific desert, people were gathered in a room with several newspapers. Did you see the meteor? Everything indicates it was headed for Mary Jo Eyes. That means someone attacked the world government, but who would do that? Spoke one of the revolutionary agents as they joined looking at the identical newspapers. There was a situation of urgency happening there. After all, who could send a meteor to the holy city? And who would have the courage to do that, leaving all the revolutionaries shocked by this? Everything indicated that the meteor was heading there, but, somehow, it fell at the foot of the mountain. It means the world government did something against that attack. The question is, who did it and how did they do it? They wondered. The world government will not fall so easily. A new voice emerged. Dragon walked through the corridor, in the middle of the crowd, looking at the newspapers while everyone looked at him, again hearing his tone as he continued. The government is not so easy to topple. They have hidden forces that we can't even imagine. Don't worry too much about this event until we have any information about it and it's not under our control. Let's continue our work. After all, our goal is to rid the world of the world government to give freedom to this world. He spoke, going to his room and closing the door as he stayed alone. Picking up today's newspaper, he glanced over the article about the meteor. After all, that was not what interested him now, but rather, his son. You really are getting so strong, Luffy. Maybe it's you who will change the world, and not me. Dragon spoke, as he looked at the photo of his son with a billion bounty poster, showing that he had grown much stronger in just 2 or 3 months since they met in Logue Town. Chapter 251, Florian Triangle Low 1. Returning to the first part of the Grand Line the next day, something strange was happening in the sea. Everything seemed calm until suddenly a white object passed at high speed like a blur. This object was an animal, more specifically a seagull, which looked scared, flying quickly forward. Behind it, another object, but this time intense, passed like a flash forward, creating a wave right behind it as it followed the seagull with the newspapers. It seems that the seagull was fleeing from a black ship that seemed persistent in following it. Come back here, little seagull. Luffy yelled from the bow of the ship. Meanwhile, the seagull looked back frightened, trying to escape from that bunch of crazies, who were insistent on pursuing her. Luffy, what are you doing? Is that seagull going to buy the newspaper? Why are you chasing it like a criminal? Yuta complained to Luffy. Luffy looked at his wife approaching with a confused and angry face. Didn't you see? It fled. We expected it to come closer to us, but suddenly it turned away and started to flee. I had no choice but to speed up the ship. Luffy spoke, using the power of the more fruit model, amplify human devil fruit. But you could have simply jumped and reached it. Why are you doing this with the ship? Yuta still looked dissatisfied. Because this way is more fun. Luffy commented without any shame. After all, he found something different to do while he just sat in the chair sunbathing. Luffy, sometimes you seem like a child. She murmured. Maybe later I can show you how I can be an adult. Luffy took advantage of this moment to grab Yuta by the waist and come closer to her face. What are you doing? She demanded with a blush on her face. Luffy didn't care about it and approached her ear, whispering something that made Yuta go from a blush to a completely red face while steam came out of her ear. He smiled at her, moving away while kissing her forehead, leaving the girl still without reaction. Luffy climbed from the bow and looked at the small crowd forming there. Are we going to catch the seagull? He asked with a wide smile. We're going to catch it, yes. Chopper exclaimed. Catch her. Usopp shouted excitedly. Go, go. Ecchi waved flags with his arms. GRR. Laboon made sounds. Crew lifted its wing, as if cheering. Sharky. Sharky. Megalo exclaimed. Go, Luffy-sama. Shirahoshi exclaimed, cheering. Super speed. Frankie exclaimed. Yuta shook her head from her dizziness with those words of Luffy in her ear and turned her face to all those people exclaiming for Luffy at the bow of the ship. It seems that Luffy is not the only child here. She could not help but murmur. Gwa. Meanwhile, the seagull tried to flee from them as if its life depended on it. After all, it was delivering newspapers normally to all the ships at sea. However, in this particular one, when it approached, it saw the Luffy crew looking at it like a predator, while their eyes shone like stars, scaring it. After all, Luffy and the others wanted to know if there was any more news about them one day after their high bounty. Some were still affected since yesterday, as, in the midst of that pursuit, there was a fight happening on the ship at this moment, regardless of the fact that it was going at high speed while chasing the seagull. How can you have a higher bounty than mine? Reiju complained, kicking another woman. I don't know why you're so angry. My bounty has always been higher than yours. Lami taunted. That's impossible. I am stronger than you. Reiju crossed her arms and stared at Lami with fire in her eyes. Stronger? Tell me another one, or do you really want to lose to me now? Then come face your defeat. Lami spoke arrogantly. You think I should go to you? You're below me. 200 million. Lami continued to taunt and then saw Reiju starting to kick her, while Lami used her sword with a sheath against the cook's legs. The fight continued, giving kicks and sword strikes in the middle of the deck, making some uncomfortable. Hey, can you stop that? Yamato complained on the side, trying to sunbathe peacefully, but the two fighting disrupted her while she felt like hitting those two. While some were angry and others quite depressed, like Nami in a corner with her sister. 100 million. 100 million, that's what we're worth now. Nami told Nojiko, who just smiled. It was bound to happen sooner or later, but I'm impressed too that we share the same bounty. Nojiko commented amiably, as Nami seemed to fall to the ground on her knees defeated, thinking she would be hunted at this moment by the world government with such a bounty. And with that, Vivi also seemed depressed. 100 million, what will my father think? She had a dark atmosphere about her. Hugo, Zoro, Kuina, Alvida, Robin didn't care much, already accustomed to the bounty. The ship continued to splash water as it cut through the sea, until a moment later, Luffy managed to capture the bird while it cried, being held by the neck with Luffy's hand. Hey, birdie, why are you so scared? Luffy commented, as everyone clapped and were impressed that he finally caught the animal. That was amazing. Good job, Luffy. That's right, you caught him. Everyone shouted, while Yuta wanted to hit everyone. Let's do this, birdie. I don't know why you ran away from me, but I want to see a lot of newspapers today. I'll buy it and you will give it to me. After that, you can go. Luffy spoke, as the seagull could feel its neck stop being tight, being released from the pirate's hand. When it fell to the ground, it didn't immediately run away, and looked at Luffy quite cautiously. The bird, seeing that it couldn't escape, nodded, intrigued by the newspaper, and Luffy handed over a note of barrels for the newspaper sale. See? Was that so hard? Luffy looked at the male bird, as the animal, without responding, simply took off, farther away from that boat. Lucio watched the bird fly away, but didn't care much. Now, looking at the newspaper, and as he predicted, there was a new picture of him on the cover, but something much more sensational than he had imagined before. The newspaper began with a picture of him and the title, The Emperor Without Territory, Monkey D. Luffy, the rookie man who emerged in the sea and is so powerful that even the greatest forces of the Navy can't stop him. And he is heading to the New World. What kind of change will he bring? Will he submit to any four emperors or will he become one? This is the question we all ask at this moment. Monkey D. Luffy, officially the worst pirate that emerged in the era of pirates. Will the old guard manage to combat him or will succumb? What kind of changes will he make in the New World? What will the government do to stop this rising threat? These questions were engraved in the newspaper, as Luffy had a big smile. That's it, Luffy, be amazing. Usopp commented next to Luffy. You see? Looks like I'm an emperor without territory now. Luffy started to laugh, in front of all his companions. I mean, almost all, while Lami and Reiju continued fighting. They have been like this since yesterday. You have to stop them, before they destroy our ship. Foo-fa-foo. Robin commented, approaching Luffy and speaking of the situation. I wanted to celebrate. But these two didn't even go to bed last night as they kept arguing all night long. Luffy commented and, seeing no other choice as he watched them exchanging blows all the time, almost going to a hockey and devil fruit fight. Well, I'll be right back. He said, disappeared a moment later and catching the two women in the middle of the fight without them being able to react, and simply entering the ship with them. While many were surprised by what he was doing, his women wondered what he would do. It was only after a few hours, calming the two women, that he returned, excited to have had a threesome with two women who competed so much they passed out on the bed. Now, let's have a feast. He said, wanting to celebrate once more with today's news. There was no more training for them, not at this moment, as the adventure now was just to enjoy the journey until the war they planned to participate in. So, being already the 10th feast since they left Inai's lobby, they began to enjoy again, while they drank beverages produced from Whiskey Peak, and the meat collected from Sky P. This continued for the rest of the day, extending through the night and ending only the next day. And it was on this day that something new happened. While Luffy was sunbathing between Reiju and Lumi, to ensure that neither of the two would fight again, he heard Usopp shouting from the mast with a magnifying glass in hand. There's a thick fog covering the entire area ahead at sea. Usopp exclaimed while Nami was studying the map and drawing some, outside her cabin, who quickly looked forward, indicated by Usopp with a raised eyebrow. This is the Florian Triangle. Nami shouted, already familiar with this aspect of the fog after reading the books about the Grand Line that Luffy gave her before the Reverse Mountain. This is good, we're finally here. Luffy nodded with satisfaction. What do you mean by that, Luffy? You speak as if we were going to enter the place. Nami exclaimed, hoping her captain wasn't crazy enough. Of course, we're going to enter. Luffy commented, as Nami looked at him, astonished. What do you mean, we're going to enter? That place is a ship graveyard, very few people enter and come out alive. She warned, leaving many beside, scared. Luffy, don't do this, I don't want to die like this, please, you're not thinking about this. Usopp pleaded while the reindeer grabbed Luffy's clothes, crying. Don't worry, this will be a good adventure, you won't regret it. I dare say we might even find a living skeleton there. Luffy spoke, so mysteriously, leaving everyone around him even more scared. A living skeleton? Many exclaimed. Robin looked, frowning at her husband. After all, he knew things about this world that no one else should know, so she took his words as truth. Meanwhile, the ship began to enter the fog without anyone being able to react, because nobody saw it approaching. After all, the sea was treacherous. While everyone looked surprised, Luffy had a smile. It's time to face Moria and get Brook. He said, after all, he had a deal and with his whale, that he would find his old friend after a long time. Chapter 252, Florian Triangle 02. Black continued to drive into the mist of Florian Triangle. While some were afraid of what Luffy had said, others didn't care. Soon darkness began to take over everything, as the sun disappeared, leaving only darkness amid that mysterious sea. Ready, guys? Don't worry, this will be a great adventure. Luffy commented as he saw Nami clutching her sister, trembling with fear. Has it gotten dark already? Nami stepped out onto the deck at that moment, looking around. How strange, it doesn't seem like night. Reiju followed soon after, lighting a cigarette. They didn't seem as quarrelsome now as they were a few hours ago. Meanwhile, the other members were yelling at Luffy, since their captain had said this madness seemed like a great adventure. A great adventure, Luffy? You said we're going to find a living skeleton. That's not funny. Usopp shouted, no longer appearing as the fearless pirate of the sea who could transform into a dragon that uses the element of light. Haha, don't worry. You'll like him. Luffy replied, still keeping the mystery. He didn't mind saying something like that, which others would question later why he knew this. What do you mean you'll like him? A part of his crew shouted at the same time with comic faces. Hey, those are parts of ships. Nami pointed to the sea, and shipwrecks, like broken wood, masts, bows, and various other parts were floating in the sea at that moment, making her swallow hard. You're a woman who can create a typhoon that can devastate an island. I don't know why you're so afraid. Luffy observed with a raised eyebrow, believing Nami's fear was exaggerated. There are certain things a woman is afraid of. She exclaimed to him. Haha. Don't worry, your husband will protect you. Luffy said with a smile. Usopp had entered the kitchen with Chopper in the middle of that discussion and returned with a bunch of artifacts that would be used against any mystical and ghostly entity, using garlic, crosses, salt, and all sorts of things, even incense. It wasn't just him, Chopper was almost dressed as a priest, making Luffy laugh. Ha 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 ha. What an exaggeration. He didn't even notice when Frankie and the animals used all kinds of items, wanting to protect themselves against any living skeleton that Luffy had talked about. Luffy laughed, and Yamato joined in with him. This is funny. I also want to use something like that, it looks so fun. Shirahoshi exclaimed, grabbing a garlic necklace. Stop it. This place is too scary. Vivi trembled with fear in a corner. Another wind user afraid. Luffy murmured, and when he was going to calm his wife, he saw something strange behind the last two women to come out of the ship. Lami, Reiju, there's a ghost behind you. Luffy pointed at the women who were a little surprised and a bit afraid. Stop it, Luffy. Vivi exclaimed, making a face. This isn't funny. Lami said, making Luffy see that the woman was afraid. Despite her strength, it seemed like she was afraid of ghosts. It's serious, there's a ghost behind you. Luffy insisted. Who's the idiot who's going to look at that? Reiju commented, lighting her cigarette. Well, it's serious. There's a ghost behind you, foo-fa-foo. Robin commented, approaching Luffy with a giggle. Is this a ghost? It's so cute. Shirahoshi approached him and commented. Really? Let me see. Yamato also got involved, looking at the ghost with admiration. Hearing all those comments, Lami and Reiju began to believe in Luffy's words, and being two curious ones, they turned around and really saw a small ghost there swinging its body, while looking at everyone with a smile. Lami. Raju. Ghost. Both Lami and Raju screamed. Chaochu approached and began to bark at the ghost, and advanced against the ghostly intruder, passing through its body. Then everyone watched stunned, as Chaochu lowered its head in depression and began to speak something in the dog's language. Should I have been born a flea? Yamato, understanding his language like Luffy, echoed his words bewildered. It seems that ghosts have a negative effect, don't touch it. Luffy spoke as everyone began to completely move away from that thing, while the swordsmen already grabbed their swords to fight. Nay. So scary. Ecchi commented with his 6 swords in hand. Then this is one of Perona's ghosts. Luffy murmured without anyone hearing. The ghost looked at him and suddenly entered the deck, disappearing. What the hell is going on? Usopp and Chopper were scared at that moment, starting to spread things around the ship to scare anything from the ship. I said this was a bad idea. Nami started crying with Vivi. Luffy, are you sure we're okay here? Nojiko spoke with a raised eyebrow. Don't worry about it. He's gone, but soon we'll see more. Luffy said with a confident smile. She didn't ask that. Kuina complained. Let my husband handle everything, he always knows what he's doing. Alvida spoke beside. And what do you mean soon we'll see more? Who wants to see that? Everyone shouted together at Luffy. Look. There's something approaching, finally a ghost ship is coming. Luffy changed the subject, pointing to the fog in front of him, where a shadow began to form, soon seen in the shape of a ship, as big as the blackberry from the movie. Why do you look so happy? Yuta shouted at the captain. Ghost ships. Usopp and Chopper screamed, running away, while the animals seemed to be afraid too. Is there a fighting ghost there? Zoro spoke, hoping for a challenge. What kind of question is that? Kuina complained. Hugo was silent the whole time, while crossing his arms looking at the ship. The ship approached as the members who were more afraid prepared for all sorts of things while dressing up as priests. It didn't take long for the ship to finally emerge, with wood of tens of years, rotten and roaring with the sway of the sea. The ship continued to approach and stood beside the Black Pearl as everyone looked attentively here, and suddenly, they saw that on the ship there was indeed a skeleton looking at them from the edge of the ship, while remaining still. Everyone was stunned by that, except Luffy, who already knew him, and Chaochu stood up and looked at the skeleton with shining eyes. The skeleton noticed the dog's gaze and seemed to sweat with that. Luffy saw that there was silence and decided to break it. Hello, you skeleton. Luffy greeted while everyone looked stunned, thinking their captain lost his sanity talking to a skeleton planted next to the ship to scare those passing through all that fog. The skeleton, surprising everyone, slowly moved his head towards Luffy, leaving everyone stunned at that moment. Hello. He greeted him dryly. There really is a talking skeleton. Everyone exclaimed, seeing that Luffy was right. What is that? Please help me. Bless me. Deliver me from this evil. The pirates began to pray and make expressions trying to protect themselves from that evil. How can you be? Luffy asked again. I'm fine, thank you for asking, and you? The skeleton asked. That's good, I'm fine. Luffy spoke as if having a casual conversation from the prow where he was. Why is he also talking to the skeleton? Yamato asked. That is a skeleton. How can he find that normal? Vivi exclaimed. Calm down, he must be a user who ate the yami no mi. Luffy said. Yes, exactly. The skeleton commented and suddenly looked at Luffy again. Hey, how do you know that? He exclaimed with admiration. I read the manual of devil fruit, I know a lot about them. Luffy shrugged. Everyone swallowed that, except Robin, who knew her husband. Anyway. Luffy began jumping from his ship to the ghost ship. Why don't we start our introductions? Luffy said with a smile while the skeleton was surprised with the approach. After so many years of not talking to anyone, it would be good to chat a little. Raju approached Luffy, and landed beside him, with Lami on the other using his room. We'll have to take care of this man, otherwise he might do some madness. Raju spoke. I have to agree with you. Lami said, swallowing her pride. Don't be like that, I won't do anything too much. Luffy said, approaching the skeleton. Hello, I'm Monkey D. Luffy, the future Emperor of the Seven Seas. He commented, extending his hand. I'm Brook. The skeleton said as he shook his hand, but was surprised by Luffy's declaration. Emperor of the Seven Seas? He asked. That's right, do you want to join my crew? It would be good to have a skeleton with us, I'm all for diversity. Luffy said with a smile. Okay. The skeleton spoke. Raju and Lami were shocked by this development while they couldn't do anything to stop their captain. What are you doing? They exclaimed, but Luffy just shrugged. He's our new crew member, tell me, what are you good at, Brook? He asked. I'm a musician. He said. See, we have a second musician. Luffy celebrated. What do you mean? We have a second musician. You can't just invite people like that. The two exclaimed. What's that, you don't trust me? Luffy looked at them with a small seductive smile. Both blushed and nodded. Yes, we trust you. Brook approached Rachel. She looked confused and wary at the skeleton. Excuse me, miss. Could you please show your... Before he could finish, a fist collided against his skull, cracking it and sending him flying into the ship's cabin. Boom. The cabin of the ship exploded at that moment with Brook's body, leaving everyone on the other ship confused by this, while Reiju and Lamy seemed shocked. How do you kill someone after inviting them to the crew? Both grimaced. Luffy didn't respond and disappeared. Brook seemed to have received the worst punch of his life. He was cracked, wondering how that happened, while before reacting, Luffy appeared in front of him and grabbed him by the bone neck. What are you doing? He exclaimed, stunned. Listen to this, skeleton. Luffy began with a tone that made Brook shiver. Try using that phrase again with any woman I know, and I will flay your skin, even though you don't have any. Luffy spoke. Yo-oh-oh. Brook started to laugh, finding Luffy's speech very funny, but then realized the man in front of him was serious. No. Help me. I swear I won't do it again. He exclaimed, scared in the end. That's good. Now let's see the others. Luffy said with a more satisfied smile, while dropping Brook's neck to the ground again as he was all cracked. He didn't want to face this man's wrath again, swallowing hard, even though he didn't have a throat for that. Chapter 253, Florian Triangle 03. Luffy emerged from the debris with a skeleton behind him, while Lamy and Reiju grimaced at the sight of the skeleton all battered from that punch. Why did you act like that? Lamy asked, not understanding her captain's situation. It was just a way to greet our new companion. Luffy said calmly, maintaining a smile, while Brook stood beside him, unfazed. You call that a greeting? Reiju exclaimed, bewildered. Luffy just shrugged. Let's go to the Black Pearl, we have to introduce our new friend. Luffy remarked, as, having nothing else to do, Reiju and Lamy nodded and followed Luffy to the other ship. They landed in front of the crew, as many were frightened by the skeleton coming with the group. The skeleton is here. Bippo screamed in fear, while at that moment, another person approached Luffy. Master, I brought some cookies. Baby 5 approached Luffy with a tray. Oh, thank you. Luffy said, taking a cookie, finding it odd that Baby 5 cooked, and everyone already imagined what would happen as soon as Luffy put it in his mouth. Baby 5 seemed excited about it with a sweet smile, but suddenly she looked at Luffy with a vengeful glare as he was eating the cookie. Eat my explosive cookies. Die. She exclaimed as Luffy felt an explosion in his mouth. His cheeks puffed up with the sound of the explosion while everyone watched it as if it were something normal. Luffy opened his mouth with a lot of smoke coming out from inside, but he was fine. I think it needs a bit of salt. Luffy told Baby 5, making her fall to the ground. Why can't I hurt him? She said in a weepy tone. Master, Baby 5 needs to be punished. She requested with shining eyes. Alright, later. Luffy said. Brook was looking at the people afraid of him, which he found normal, except for a dog next to the crew licking its eyes as if seeing something juicy at the moment, adding to seeing the interaction with Luffy and that maid woman made him start to rethink if it was a good idea to come here. After all, he does not think this crew is common, filled with all sorts of things. I'm going to be okay here. Should I run away? He thought, but soon felt a slap on his backbones. Now let me introduce our new companion. Luffy spoke and before continuing, looked at Reiju. But first, let's eat something. Let's go to the kitchen. Luffy declared while everyone trying to get used to the idea of seeing a skeleton walking around, even those who were not afraid, began to walk to the kitchen, which was filled by the entire crew. Food, 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 food. Brook began to shout on the table, after overcoming his initial fear of the group while banging his utensils in front of everyone. Ha ha ha. He is so funny. Luffy laughed. Luffy, what is happening here? Why did you bring this skeleton here and Reiju is cooking for him? Zoro asked. Seeing everyone looking at them, he smiled. Let me introduce, this is our new ship's musician. He said, leaving everyone with their mouths open and eyes wide. What do you mean, new musician? Vivi exclaimed, incredulous. A musician like you, Tasama? Shirahoshi yelled, not seeming to be afraid of the skeleton, and looked excited. While Brook looked at her, still surprised to see such a beautiful mermaid. He cleared his throat as he addressed her. Princess, by any chance, could you show your... He was going to complete, but Luffy put a finger over his mouth, making Brook gulp with that. Brook trembled looking at him. Luffy had a penetrating look, saying that if he continued, he might not survive. Making Brook silent, after all, he was already cracked from a punch by Luffy, he did not want that again. Meanwhile, Shock was among many crew members wondering how Luffy had brought the skeleton into the crew. Hold on, hold on. What do you mean, a new musician? What happened there? Zoro asked, bewildered looking at Lami and Rachel. They had to lower their heads at that. Sorry. We didn't even have time to react when he invited him onto the ship. The two murmured. Luffy put Brook aside and looked at his companions. Don't worry, he's a nice guy, as long as he sticks to certain things. Luffy said, crossing his arms, indifferent to whether his crew was pleased with it or not. After all, he was the captain. Anyway, let's eat. Luffy didn't want to introduce the skeleton because he wanted to eat first. Everyone watched without joining them as Luffy ate along with the skeleton, who became animated again, forgetting how this pirate captain could be frightening. Both were talking with their mouths full, interacting with each other. What are they talking about? You asked. I have no idea. Hugo answered from the corner. They are talking about how Luffy knew about the Yami Yami no Mi. Yamato answered. How can you understand them? Usopp shouted at Yamato. This is so scary. Chopper said while still pointing the cross at Brook on the table. I find him very funny. So, he really joined the crew? Yamato asked Luffy. Not yet, but he will soon. Luffy said, after all, he hadn't received the system message that Brook had joined the group yet. That was delicious. Brook exclaimed with satisfaction, his face still cracked. Even though I have no taste buds to taste it. Yo-oh-oh. He began to laugh, while many frowned upon it. What kind of humor is this? Most were thinking at this moment. That's funny. Shirahoshi exclaimed. Sharky? Her shark looked at her, not understanding why she wasn't afraid. That was so refreshing. Brook commented as he raised his arms, and as he did, a dog bit him while hanging from that arm. Chaochu couldn't take it anymore and lunged at Brook's bones. While the skeleton looked at it, Chaochu held onto his arm while hanging, refusing to let go of the musician. Ah! I'm being eaten. Even though I have no skin for it, yo-oh-oh. Ah! He exclaimed, running with the dog still attached to him. Ha 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 ha. Yamato started laughing too. Man, this is so weird. This group gets weirder by the day. Zoro had to comment, and no one disagreed with him. Now enough of this, let's get to the introduction. Luffy continued. They are Yamato, Shirahoshi, Megalo, Zoro, Lami, Bippo, Chaochu, Usopp, Nami, Raju, Hugo, Nojiko, Hucky, Kuina, Alvida, Laboon, Vivi, Crew, Nico, Robin, Chopper, Enel, Greg, Baby 5, and Frank, the 25 members of our crew. Luffy introduced and turned back to the skeleton with a thoughtful look. What's your name again? He asked because he hadn't asked yet, and although he knew, it would be odd to say his name without asking first. At that moment, everyone fell to the ground stunned by their captain. How could you have invited him to join the crew and even eaten with him, but never asked his name? Even Yamato joined in the shouting. Luffy didn't care about that and waited for the skeleton to introduce himself. Yo-oh-oh. He stopped with Chaochu still clinging to his head, not letting go. Let me introduce myself, I am Brook. Wait a minute. Did you say Laboon? He was stunned while Laboon looked at him after hearing his name. Brook was a skeleton, with nothing but his hair looking like his old self, and Laboon was so small that Brook, despite remembering his old whale friend, didn't think it would be him there, especially with all those scars on his head. GRR? Laboon approached, surprising everyone. Laboon? Brook seemed so shocked that he no longer cared about Chaochu with its teeth clenched in his head. Brook looked at the whale, which had scars on its head, feeling strange about it, now remembering his friend from over 50 years ago. Do they know each other? Robin commented, looking surprised at the encounter. Wait a minute. Is he from that crew that left Laboon at the entrance of the Grand Line 50 years ago? Nami asked, stunned. This is unexpected. Nojiko commented. It makes sense if he ate the resurrection fruit. Kuina commented. Laboon, is it really you? Brook stammered, feeling a huge emotion upon seeing the whale he had left many years ago. Laboon, it's me, Brook. He said as tears began to appear in his empty eyes. GRR. Laboon moved forward, leaving some shocked by the sorrowful sound of the whale. As everyone watched, both embraced tightly while colliding. Chaochu looked confused at the scene as he let go of Brook's head and fell to the ground, watching his friend Laboon crying and making sounds. I'm so happy. So happy to have found you. Brook cried out while embracing the whale with his bony arms. GRR. GRR. Laboon made crying sounds, resembling a dog not seeing its owner for many years. I don't know what's happening here. But I'm so moved, man. Frankie began to cry as well. Luffy. Is it really him? Vivi commented, stunned. Even though she once intended to kill the whale, she had heard its sad story. "What's happening here?" Chopper asked curiously. "You weren't part of the crew when we met Laboon after entering the Grand Line." Alvida began. "His scars were made by himself after trying to break the Red Line." "The Red Line?" Robin asked, surprised, not knowing much about the whale's story like the other members who joined after that event. He wanted to reach the other side, go to the new world behind his old friends who left him 50 years ago, but in the end, they were in the Grand Line this whole time, and unfortunately, it seems only one survived. Nojiko commented sadly. "I'm so happy for Laboon-sama. He finally found a lost companion." Shirahoshi began to cry as well. "Really?" Nami also broke into tears. Sharky. Megalo started to cry, and Chouchou approached them, not wanting to interrupt the reunion. Brook continued to cry out his old friend's name, and he responded with his unique sounds. "This is quite moving." Kuina spoke, shedding a tear. "Are you crying?" Lami pointed to Reiju with tears. "Of course not, you baby." Reiju pointed back at another who was crying. "Laboon." Vippo shouted, crying. Usopp even put down his anti-supernatural artifacts and began to cry silently watching the reunion. What an emotional reunion. Ecchi tried to wipe his tears with his 6 arms. "Really?" Yamato spoke, dabbing at her tears. Luffy saw almost the entire crew crying at the sight of the skeleton and a small whale in the middle of the kitchen and smiled. Even those who weren't crying had an empathetic look towards Laboon, forgetting there was a living skeleton there. Luffy smiled and realized they needed to give them some time for this reunion. "Let's leave them alone for a while, let them talk. Let's go outside," Luffy suggested and began to walk outside with the teary crowd. He took a deep breath while everything was still shrouded in darkness in that Florian triangle, but he was happy there was something positive in the midst of that fog. Not long after, while his members were still emotional, a huge shadow began to emerge on the horizon. Luffy felt better with his haki, entering his current field, smiling, ignoring the conversation about Brook and Laboon. "We've reached our destination," Luffy commented, as everyone looked stunned at the huge shadow approaching. He returned to his crew with tears still on their faces. "Do you know why we're here?" he asked, as no one knew the answer, and then, he pointed to the shadow emerging and growing. "We're here to take down another 7 warlords of the seas," he said, excitedly, while everyone was stunned by the declaration, never imagining there was a warlord here. They were arriving at Thriller Bark at that moment. "Get ready, mates, because today we're going to defeat another warlord," he said, excited, wanting to loot everything Moria had and give him a few punches. Maybe Kuma would also appear. It would be interesting to talk to him, Luffy thought, as Thriller Bark loomed larger in front of them. Chapter 254, Thriller Bark 01. The crew took a while to understand Luffy's words, looking at their captain wiping away the tears that some had from the meeting with Laboon and Brook. "How are we going to take down another 7 warlords of the seas?" Ute immediately asked while the others intensified their gaze towards their captain. Luffy flashed his rogue smile. "That has always been my goal for coming here, after all, Moria lives here. It will be a good opportunity to loot his treasures," he said. "We're out of money, we need more money," Luffy said sincerely. The gold was running out and he didn't want to rely only on a system. He also used the Navy's money to buy a specific fruit, from a user he had killed a while back, so he was in need of money again. "I'll see who will be the user of this fruit after the war. After all, we must strengthen all the kingdoms under my domain," Luffy thought and returned to his crew. "Be prepared for battle, but I don't believe it will be a fight like what happened at Enai's lobby, far from it," Luffy commented and looked forward again. Soon, the coast of Thriller Bark began to appear as the fog started to dissipate. But the structure that claimed this place was a ship, still remained hidden with these other parts still distant, closed off by the fog. "Is that where the 7 warlords of the seas lives?" Nojiko asked. Even seeing just that part, it was obvious that the island was sinister with a horror theme, with old and macabre trees. "What place is this? Is this an island?" Alvida asked. "No, it's a ship," Luffy replied calmly and looked at his group. "Get ready, because we're going to see zombies, strange creatures, ghosts, everything in this place," he commented, as Nami clung to Vivi looking at him with frightened eyes. "How can you say such things?" They screamed frightened. Luffy didn't care and started to prepare. The ship found a kind of wooden deck on the side like a kind of harbor. Frankie ended up steering the ship there, stopping at the deck. With the bow falling into place, they were getting ready to disembark. "Luffy, I want to stay on the ship," Chopper cried. "Sorry Chopper, but I won't leave the ship here alone, these waters are treacherous." "I plan to take the ship in my pocket," Luffy commented, but having to take out other ships from his pocket, after all, he couldn't shrink them more than they were. At this moment, Brooke opened the kitchen door, still crying. It seemed they had talked a lot. They approached while Laboon was still clinging to him. Laboon told me about you and your adventures. Thank you, he said sincerely, looking at everyone still with tears in his skull bones. I see you're getting along. Nojiko spoke to him with a smile. Yes, we never forgot each other. Laboon will always be my friend. It's good to see him after so many years. Maybe he's the only one who survived of all the people I've known. Brooke spoke with a melancholic tone. He was going to speak again, but for the first time he took his attention off the crew in front of him and looked towards where they were. Thriller bark. Are we here? He yelled, scared, even leaving Laboon confused. He was afraid of this place. After all, the people here were so strong that they even stole his shadow and he could do nothing about it. On an impulsive instinct, he simply acted scared and irrationally. We have to run, he shouted, leaving Laboon aside and jumping into the water, starting to run on the sea due to his lightness from being just bones, while moving away from the coast and the ship. Everyone was puzzled, even Laboon made a confused sound. Luffy, from a distance, sighed. How can he run away like that after finding his friend? And looked at Chaochu. Can you catch him and bring him back? He asked. Chaochu, hearing that, had a sparkle in his eyes. After all, in his opinion, those were succulent bones. Woof woof. He barked positively. Then he jumped on the edge of the ship, not falling into the water, but soaring into the air as he used moonwalk with his paws, going after the fleeing skeleton. How can he run away like that? Kuina complained. Let it be, Chaochu will bring him back. Zoro commented, returning his gaze to the island they were on, hoping to find something interesting. Now let's enter the island, Luffy said, as they began to disembark. Laboon, despite looking a bit dazed at where Brooke and Chaochu disappeared, followed his captain. Luffy waited for everyone to get off the ship, then touched it and shrank it to the point of putting it in a box along with his other ships. He looked at his companions. Nami, Vivi, Ecchi, Chopper, Usopp, Utek, Megalo, Crew, Vippo, and Greg were afraid as they looked at the island in front of them, while they armed themselves with all kinds of anti-ghost weapons that Usopp used. Most of them could easily destroy this island, but their fears seemed to dominate them. Luffy couldn't help thinking as he watched the scared group, but he couldn't blame them. After all, his crew had their own fears and insecurities, and he could understand and respect that. He could also simply fly to the middle of the island where Moria's castle was located, but he ended up not doing so, wanting to spend time with his crew like in the old days when they were on the ship and investigating the islands, as happened in the West Blue. He didn't even enjoy Water 7, wanting to resolve the issue with the Navy at Enai's lobby. Let's go, Luffy said as the fearful members followed, seeing that they had no choice but to follow Luffy and the others in the crew. They were a large group of more than 20 people, animals, a fishman, a mink, a mermaid, and even an experiment. The place was gloomy, a spectrum of horror with the fog limiting the view ahead. Chopper swung a burning incense through the area while Usopp distributed garlic chains to everyone. You're exaggerating, Zoro commented. They continued entering the place until there was a kind of gate from the harbor to the island's forest, and at this location, there was a huge animal sleeping in front of the entrance. Wait a second. That's a three-headed dog, Yuta exclaimed. This reminds me of someone, Alvida commented beside her. The dog moved its ear, hearing them, lifted its three heads with a sleepy face. It was a bit surprised by the crowd of people looking at it. How cute, Shirahoshi commented. Cute, that's Cerberus, the one who guards the gate of hell, Usopp yelled. How scary, Nami exclaimed. Ah. We need to run, Vippo exclaimed. Nay. I think it was a bad idea to come here, Ecchi exclaimed. The dog heard the group and began to fully rise, starting to growl at them with its three heads. Luffy was in front of everyone, not intimidated like his companions, or a part of them, because the others didn't even care about it, just looking at a weak animal. He went through various experiments. Hugo noticed the stitches on the animal, which makes him a fake. Kuina completed. What a disappointment. In the end, he doesn't even seem dangerous. At least my hockey says I don't need to worry about him, Zoro commented. But doesn't he look cute? Robin commented. I think he would make a fine dish, Reiju commented. Isn't that meat rotten? Who would eat that thing? Lami commented. Luffy, what do we do with him? Nojiko asked. Master. Should I prepare him? Baby 5 asked while her hand transformed into a chainsaw. We could use him as a mount, Yamato suggested, scratching his chin. Moria's Cerberus was growling, but when it began to hear each one of that group, mocking and not being afraid of him, it became a bit dazed, wondering what it was hearing, with wide eyes and some fear starting to fill it at that moment, since it didn't like what it was hearing at all. We can, Luffy said but stopped when he felt something coming from the sky. An object with great mass fell to the ground with force and caused an explosion behind the crew, destroying the whole place. Before anyone could wonder who it was, those with some haki already knew who had arrived, and in the middle of the explosion, as the dust began to settle, a huge Cerberus appeared, but this one was the real deal. While in its middle head's mouth, it seemed to be chewing something. Help, help me, I don't want to die, though I've already died again, yeah-oh-oh. Brook exclaimed while he was between the dog's teeth. Chao-Chu seemed happy to bite into that bone. Suddenly, his gaze returned to Cerberus, at least the fake one, as he glared furiously at it, seeing that thing as a poorly made copy of himself. Cerberus, already bewildered by the group, was scared when he saw the huge dog with 3 heads. It was 3 to 4 meters tall, but that giant monster was at least 20 meters tall, making it look small in comparison. Chao-Chu transformed towards that dog while spitting Brook out onto the ground, and fiercely looked at the animal, which began to retreat step by step. One of Chao-Chu's heads began to emit lightning, and before anyone could react, a huge thunderbolt passed over the heads of all the crew members, hitting the stitched animal in front of them and destroying the gate and a part of the forest with it. Boom! The explosion echoed across the island. In Moria's castle, he was having his meal alone, with a zombie bringing something for him to eat, when he looked towards the window with the echo of it. What's that? Are those zombies blowing something up again? He commented with some anger. After all, zombies always cause trouble, despite being the greatest army in the world in his opinion. What's that? Perona woke up startled, imagining that lightning struck during a storm over Thriller Bark. Her ghosts surrounded her making their usual sounds. I'm scared, she said as she hugged a huge bear she had in her room. Did you hear that? A group of people who had lost their shadows, hiding in the forest, were surprised by the sound echoing on the island. What's going on here? Among them, a fat woman with pink hair, Charlotte Lola, murmured. Back at the explosion site, everyone saw the gate collapse at that moment while electricity sparkled in the air with the destroyed ground, and Cerberus' zombie was black from the lightning that burned it, the only color coming from its white eyes. Chao-Chu saw that he hadn't destroyed it and began to concentrate icy energy in his other head, ready to destroy that being, freezing and breaking it into 1,000 pieces. Wait, Chao-Chu. Don't kill him, Luffy ordered, and Chao-Chu stopped generating the attack and looked at his owner. We'll use him, and you did a good job bringing Brook here. He looked at Brook lying on the ground. Chao-Chu returned to his normal size after that, turning into a small dog with lots of white fur, barking at Luffy. Good boy, Luffy said. Brook finally got up wondering what was happening and saw Luffy petting that monstrous dog. He still remembers when the dog caught him in the sea and transformed into those monsters, devouring him in its mouth and bringing him back to the island again. This crew is full of monsters. What have I gotten myself into? He murmured. After all, he still remembers the maid woman trying to kill his captain and how his captain didn't hesitate to say that he would die if he tried to ask for the panties of any woman there. Luffy stopped petting and returned to the group. Let's continue, Yamato. You can use Cerberus zombie as a mount and Chao-Chu, make sure Brook doesn't run away, Luffy said as they began to walk past the destroyed gate. Chapter 255, Thriller Bark 02. Brook finally stood up. What a sight. You meet your old friend and flee at the first chance? I expected more from you, my musician. Luffy approached Brook at that moment. Brook was speechless, although terrified of returning to Moria's domain. He heard Luffy's words and looked towards Slaboon who showed confusion looking at him. I guess you're right, he admitted, realizing he had let his fears take over. I'm sorry, old friend, he said as he approached Slaboon. Let's move on, don't worry, because nothing will happen to you, Luffy assured. Luffy continued with his group into the forest of Thriller Bark, with a new member of the group, with a cornered Cerberus along with them, or at least a copy of the real one, who was downcast, while Yamato rode it like a horse, kicking its skin with her feet. Go, go, Cerberus. Ha ha ha. She screamed joyfully, having a happy, childish moment. Go ahead, she said, raising her arm, while the animal could only lower its head being intimidated by it. After all, there was a small dog walking beside him, which he was very afraid of. Woo-LFF. 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 Chao-Chu started to wake up while Cerberus was in despair, seeing that Chao-Chu was commanding him to obey Yamato. He had no choice but to run as Yamato shouted, starting to run. Well done, Cerberus. Yamato laughed with that, moving forward. Robin was sitting with Utelso on the back of the animal, while the girl sang to dispel the fear of the place. Luffy saw them running, and continued leading the rest of the group, passing through the eerie forest and coming out of it, while finding Cerberus and the others stopped at a sort of local cemetery. Luffy. Can this place get any worse? Yuta complained on the back of the animal. Foo-fa-foo. This place is quite unique, Robin commented. It was so cool the run, We had to stop because of you, Yamato complained, not caring at all about the sight of a cemetery. This cemetery. Luffy walked past Cerberus and ignored his crew members murmuring fearfully about the place. Luffy went up to one of the graves while his crew watched him. Suddenly, a constant moaning sound appeared in the place. Then from between the grave and Luffy, a hand emerged from the ground, rising with a head appearing, proving to be an undead. Meanwhile, the more fearful ones were frightened by it. Ah! What is that? It's a zombie. Seriously, what is a zombie? Was he sleeping under the ground? How do you not know what a zombie is? The zombie stared at the companions in despair and then turned his attention to Luffy in front of him, studying him with crossed arms, while a growling sound came from him, but he was surprised that Luffy was not afraid. This could be said of Yamato too, who approached with Cerberus and looked alongside Luffy. Is this one? He murmured uncertainly. A sick old man? He commented as everyone made a face. It's a zombie. Almost everyone exclaimed at the same time. Ha 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 ha, that was funny. Luffy laughed and looked at the zombie. Now Mr. Zombie. Go back to Earth. He said, and before the man with rotting flesh could react, Luffy punched him in the face, making his growl turn into a scream of surprise. Ah! He screamed, as the punch was so strong that it exploded the earth with a light around. Boom! The ground beneath that poor soul exploded with such force that all the terrain around began to crack and explode, devastating the entire cemetery, while the sound exploded once more throughout Moria's ship island. The earth rose and all the zombies who were hiding inside were surprised as they flew with the force of the punch that Luffy had just made. Ah! WHO woke me up like this. Help, I'm flying, I don't know how to fly. You're a zombie. You can't get hurt. You too. They exclaimed in the air, while all of the crew looked at it, opening their mouths with their eyes wide open, wondering why Luffy had done something like that. Luffy, in the middle of all that destruction with just one of his punches, ended up scratching the back of his head and looking at his crew. I think I overdid it. He commented as everyone made faces. You think you overdid it? Everyone shouted. And Luffy laughed at that. While Brook looked shocked at it. The zombies continued to scream as they began to fall to the ground, wondering what the hell was happening when they were sleeping peacefully. They quickly fell to the ground and saw that the entire cemetery had been destroyed while they made shocked faces. Moria once again heard the explosion from his castle. What the hell is going on here today? He murmured, dissatisfied. Perona was once again frightened, leaving the room and going to look for Moria-sama to see what was happening. Returning to the destroyed grounds of the old cemetery, the zombies finally saw Luffy amidst that chaos and began to run from him. Hey, why are the zombies running away? Zoro asked, bewildered. Maybe they're scared or something. Hugo murmured. Well, anyway, let's go. Luffy said, not caring about the rain of zombies falling at that moment while those already fleeing from them screamed and called them monsters. You homewreckers. They distanced themselves and began to shout at Luffy. I'm calling the Navy. I'm calling the government. I'm telling everything to my mom. All the Straw Hats heard their protests from a distance, but none of them dared to approach. They're so funny. Shirahoshi laughed at that. This seems so strange. Nami murmured. The sea really is vast. Little Chopper murmured. What kind of fake zombies are these? Kuina complained. After all, a zombie shouldn't be afraid of anything. Why are they complaining that Luffy destroyed their cemetery like a union or something? They continued past the cemetery, ignoring the zombies booing them from a distance and heading towards the large structures in the middle of the island, which were shadows in the fog ahead. At one moment, Luffy saw a kind of white substance flying between the trees. A ghost. Usopp shouted as he pointed his cross at it, with Bippo doing the same next to him, which could be said of Ecchi with 6 crosses, one in each of his arms. That's the ghost here that we saw on a ship. The Leap shouted. Crew clung to Vivi in fear while she did the same. Luffy was thoughtful, he definitely did not want that ghost to touch him. After all, except for Usopp and the group, everyone was affected by this negative ghost, no matter the raw power. I can cut it. Zoro suddenly spoke, stepping in front of Luffy. The ghost seemed to see this and dived into the ground. TSK. It escaped. Zoro commented, but it seems his haki did not notice when the ghost appeared coming out of the earth below him and passed through his body. A moment later, Zoro was on the ground with a negative atmosphere. I should be an amoeba. He said while everyone was shocked by this. What happened to him? How can he say such a thing? Others murmured. Wasn't it the same thing that happened to Chaochu? Nojiko commented. It's true. Definitely, I don't want to get close to that. Reija said as a ghost passed by her at that moment, making the girl fall to the ground. I'm never going to cook in my life again, I shouldn't even have been born. She said. Buff. Ha 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 ha. Lami next to her pointed at her and began to laugh loudly. She didn't even notice when the ghost came out of the ground again and caught her. I'm the worst doctor in the world. I apologize for being born. She murmured next to Raju. It's better not to touch him, after all, it seems to affect everyone negatively. Alvida commented. While everyone tried to distance themselves from the ghost, one did not. Chouchou started barking and chasing after the ghost. He jumped into the air and tried the same as before, but ended up on the ground crying with dog sounds. Why did he do that? Luffy couldn't help but comment. He is coming for me. Usopp screamed as the ghost ran towards him and passed through him the next moment. Usopp looked at his body to see if everything was okay since he was not affected. Nothing happened? I don't understand. He said. That's because he's already negative. Someone shouted. Amazing. Usopp is immune. Nami said. Usopp is so cool. Chopper's eyes sparkled. Really? Bippo celebrated. Am I immune? Usopp could hardly believe it. Of course, after all, I am a brave warrior of the sea. He said. Nay. That's amazing. Ecchi said, unaware of the ghost passing through him at that moment. The merman was lying on the ground. I should be a joke. He murmured. Well, anyway, forget the ghost. Luffy spoke after seeing that it had gone. We should go. He said. The crew continued moving forward. Shouldn't I have been born an amoeba? Kuina commented, looking at Zoro and laughing, while the swordsman became frustrated after having the ghost pass through him, being teased by his childhood friend. Damn, I swear I'm going to kill that devil fruit user. Lami commented, walking strangely, frustrated, after Luffy mentioned that the one creating these ghosts was a devil fruit user. No, I'm the one who's going to destroy him. Raju said, as flames covered her body. She was determined to destroy the owner of these ghosts. Neither of them liked having acted that way. It was humiliating, especially in front of their own rival. So, they wanted to move forward to see who was the user controlling them. As they continued walking, they finally reached the center of the ship island but couldn't help noticing the zombies watching them from the forest, looking at them and murmuring to each other. These zombies are so weird. Nojiko commented, always believing the stories that they were bloodthirsty beings, but they seemed like ordinary people, besides the rotting flesh. They are definitely experiments of some sort. All their bodies and limbs are stitched together, even this dog here. Robin commented, pointing to the fake Cerberus, who was now behaving like a common dog at that moment, intimidated. Don't talk like that, he's a great mount. Yamato exclaimed with a smile on her face, making them contradict themselves, not knowing if that was a compliment or an offense. We finally arrived. Luffy suddenly interrupted their conversation as they reached a huge castle. Is this where the 7 warlords of the seas lives? Zoro asked. This guy really likes to live in a horror setting. Hugo said. Luffy didn't respond to their conversation and started walking up to the huge door which, as he approached, opened with a zombie dressed as a butler appearing. He looked a bit strange at that group. How may I assist you? He spoke with a cracked voice. I would like to speak with Moria. Tell him I am here waiting. Luffy spoke calmly, while the members of his crew looked somewhat stunned. After all, he didn't come here to defeat the 7 warlords of the seas. Luffy seemed so polite. Moria, who was busy, was called. Lord Moria, there's a group of people wanting to see you outside the castle. The zombie butler spoke, making Moria look at him surprised. A crowd of people? He asked, bewildered, as no one usually visited him. Let's see what they want. He said as he approached, walking down the hallway. He ended up finding Perona walking after a restless sleep caused by 2 explosions, looking at Moria. Moria-sama, did something happen? What were those explosions? She asked. I don't know, but it seems we have visitors. I'm going to see who it is. He commented as he approached the door and opened it, seeing a group of more than 20 people, including all kinds of species, with animals. He was a bit surprised by this. Who are you? He immediately asked. I'm Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy said with a smile, as everyone looked on, wondering what their captain would do this time. Monkey D. Luffy? Moria exclaimed, remembering this man who not only defeated Crocodile in Alabasta but also remembered very well the meeting he had at Manafort with Luffy receiving a bounty of 750 million, which was shortly after defeating one of the 3 calamities and Doflamingo in Jaya. He became a bit cautious about this, because this pirate did not seem like someone he could handle, since he had already defeated 7 warlords of the seas. What do you want? Moria asked cautiously. Luffy just smiled with his eyes closed. I came here to defeat you. He simply said, and before Moria could react or Perona next to him, also stunned by what she heard, Luffy advanced. A moment later he hit Moria with a punch right in his face, making the 7 warlords of the seas fly back against his castle. Chapter 256, Thriller Bark 03. Thriller Bark was returning to normal after some mysterious explosions occurred, but once again, the explosive sound echoed through the air. It was now happening at the castle as it began to tremble and crack while dust rose from its base. The sound was heard by everyone as destruction unfolded with everything there breaking. Perona, standing nearby, looked on with a shocked and frightened face as she trembled. Moria-sama was sent flying like a rocket by that guy. She was still trying to process what was happening with this man attacking him without warning. Luffy usually wouldn't fight this way without warning, but he was there to defeat the man, so there was no reason for talk or waiting. Meanwhile, the crew looked on in shock, their mouths and eyes wide open. That was super weird and unexpected. Frank commented. Brooke, standing next to him, had his mouth open wider than usual. Well, did you expect anything different from our captain? Hugo commented, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Luffy always acts unexpectedly. Reiju remarked. Several walls of the castle had broken, and on the ground at the end of them, Moria lay fallen, his face an expression of gritted teeth with blood running down his face, slowly rising with so much anger that his initial fear of Luffy had disappeared, wanting to kill this man who dared to attack him in his castle like this. Moria-sama. Perona shouted worriedly, and looked at Luffy cautiously. Luffy turned his gaze, while she trembled with his eyes on her. Sorry, little girl, but we're on the wrong side. Luffy said, and she saw that he was about to attack. She then prepared her ghosts, despite the fear. Luffy would have let her fight Usopp initially, but he didn't want to hurt her. He simply appeared behind her without her noticing and tapped on her neck, making her faint and caught her before she fell. He picked her up by the clothes and threw her to a slightly surprised Shirahoshi. Take care of her, Shira. He said and turned his attention to his crew. If anyone tries to attack, fight. He concluded and disappeared the next moment. He moved at high speed advancing against 7 warlords of the seas who began to rise with so much anger that his shadows started to move beneath his feet. And before he could act, Luffy was already in front of him. You're slow. Luffy commented, as Moria barely had time to respond, feeling a kick from Luffy, flying even further, destroying another part of the castle. As the walls exploded, Moria felt increasingly hurt. This bastard. He muttered. I won't forgive this way. He exclaimed, as his body on the ground transformed into bat sand. Quickly, several bats joined together and formed Moria again, standing, looking towards where Luffy was with anger. Luffy looked at that a bit more satisfied, feeling at least that the man wouldn't just be beaten without a fight. Then his hand began to catch fire. Let's see if you can take this. Luffy commented, as he leaned back with the flames growing on his arm, until he punched forward, launching a storm of flames. The explosion continued advancing in purple flames exploding on all the walls that were not affected by the wider reach going up to Moria, who looked stunned at it. It didn't take long for one side of the castle to explode completely, while Moria flew out, heading towards the forest, breaking the ground. The explosion echoed as the zombies in the forest looked stunned at it illuminating the central part of the ship, wondering what was happening. Hey, what's going on? Is that group of people causing chaos again? A zombie asked dissatisfied. Damn. I lost my house. Another complained with his tombstone. Just you, we're all homeless, we should talk to Moria. Another complained with the destroyed cemetery. How can they do this? Another spoke crying. Some approached the chaos and waited for the dust to settle, becoming frightened. Hey, isn't that Moria? One of them pointed. The dust settled showing Moria a bit burned at the end of all that explosion. Is that really Moria? How strange, what's happening here? A zombie put his hand on his chin. Why is he all beaten up? Who did this? Another zombie asked, bewildered. Meanwhile, Moria opened his eyes with difficulty, nearly cracking his teeth from clenching them in anger. That damned pirate, he will pay for everything. Moria shouted angrily, his voice echoing across the entire island, scaring all the nearby zombies. Run. Moria is furious. One of them shouted. We have to flee. Another said. The crew just watched, unable to react, but some were disappointed. After all, Luffy was destroying that 7 warlords of the seas so easily. Man, this guy really is weak. Yamato commented thoughtfully. It's true, even Nami could handle him today. Another commented, as his sister made a face. What do you mean by that? She exclaimed to Nojiko, her sister speaking for her being one of the weakest in the group. Robin laughed. Seems like this one is even below Crocodile. As she spoke, Vivi looked at her and said. It's true. Well. Not to interrupt, but it looks like we have company. Zoro commented, beyond Shirahoshi who was holding Perona. Some sensed, through their haki, a presence at the site, which was Absalom, using his devil fruit of invisibility. Somebody there, ho? Chopper asked bewildered. Right here, look. Usopp spoke as he took his slingshot and aimed at a corner of the castle. Absalom was frightened by that. After all, he had never been caught off guard like this, wanting to rescue Perona from the hands of these pirates. But without warning, Usopp made his slingshot glow and fired a laser shot. Immediately the area exploded into a ball of light, disintegrating the ground, while from the smoke, a man burned by Usopp's light power fell to the ground unconscious. Usopp hadn't killed him but certainly had put him out of action for a long time. Got him. Usopp said, adjusting his nose proudly. Hey, didn't you go overboard? Brook yelled, more scared of this crew than anything else. With each moment, these pirates were becoming weirder, revealing themselves as all kinds of monsters. What's going on here? The doctor who worked for Moria was in his laboratory working on Oz when he felt all the explosions and quickly came to see what was happening while finding the castle partially destroyed. He saw from an opening on the upper floors the group destroying Absalom and with Perona with that mermaid, unconscious. He swallowed hard and took a few steps back, seeing that even Moria was having a hard time from a distance. I have to get out of here, he said, looking at his secretary who was a zombie, who was helping him. Let's go, he said. Look what we have here. They heard a voice and quickly saw a large man behind them, crossing his arms. It was Hugo, who also sensed a bit of their presence, despite not being an expert in observation hockey, certainly felt the presence of those curious eyes, like others. And before the doctor could react, Hugo slapped him on the head, making him faint. The woman looked at this and tried to charge at Hugo, but he, seeing that she was just a zombie, didn't hold back and simply punched her, making her explode from the wall, flying to the ground, creating another explosion as the dust rose. After that, in the middle of the smoke, Hugo came out dragging the doctor. Caught another rat here, he said. What's with these people? Brook was really scared at that moment. He simply watched this crew destroy every member of the crew that had taken his shadow. Meanwhile, with Moria rising from the ground, he soon heard the ground slam in front of him. Luffy appeared as his cape flew, keeping a small smile. Straw Hat. He spoke slowly with anger at this man who appeared and began to assault him. You will pay for this. He shouted for the third time this promise, launching bats at Luffy, who just stood still, feeling the blows and mocked Moria. Man, I don't even need to use my transformation to deal with your attacks. Honestly, I hope you get stronger than this, otherwise, you'll be destroyed. Luffy just commented. And before Moria could react, Luffy appeared above him, taking out his pistol and beginning to shoot a stream of flames downwards. Moria quickly tried to escape, transforming into his bat form and flying away as explosions began to occur in the holes. The explosions were so large that the zombies fleeing the area were hit while running. Ah! They screamed in fright as the flames began to burn the forest. Something is happening on the island. A man who had lost his shadow and was living in a hidden part of the forest murmured. More and more people came out of their hiding spots as they heard the explosions, with the sky lighting up with Luffy's flames. Somebody is fighting Gecko Moria, a sailor exclaimed. As they gathered wondering what was happening, suddenly Moria's voice resonated across the island. Listen, my zombies. Advance against the invaders. He shouted to the entire island, commanding his zombies. Moria wants us to fight those monsters. A zombie shouted in fear. We need to get out of here, they exclaimed, but before they could react, their bodies were paralyzed, and they quickly began to obey, realizing they had no choice, and started advancing towards the crew in front of the castle and Luffy. But Luffy wasn't worried about this. He knew the crew could easily handle that number and had prepared something for Utan Brook on the way to the castle. It looks like they're starting to get brave now, Shirahoshi commented, watching the zombies finally approaching them as they walked, groaning like true zombies at this moment. Now they really look like zombies, Chopper commented, and then suddenly realized the fact that there was a crowd of zombies advancing on him. Zombies. They're going to devour us. Help. He began to scream while Crew, Megalo, and Greg also became frightened. Suddenly, a man exploded out of the castle, with Brook looking surprised. It's him, he said, pointing to the zombie appearing. Who is this? Kuina asked, feeling a strange sensation coming from that zombie. The zombie stopped closer to them and looked on, while the others still advanced. My name is Shimatsuki Ruma. He spoke calmly. Shimatsuki. This took Kuina by surprise, as it was her last name. Wait. She pointed. Are you the real Shimatsuki Ruma? She looked, seeing that it was a corpse right there, connecting the dots being her own ancestor, at least his body. He's got my shadow, Brook said. That's right, yo-oh-oh. Shimura commented, laughing in the same manner as Brook. Leave him to me. Zoro wanted to fight that zombie, but was soon stopped. No, he's mine. He's my ancestor, let me fight him. Kuina requested, grabbing her sword and heading towards the zombie. While Kuina drew her sword to fight her newfound adversary, Luffy was advancing on Moria himself, who couldn't react much given the power difference between them, and he couldn't even prepare and gather all his shadows to fight against this opponent who was catching up to him. He just had to find a chance to keep him busy for a while until he could gather enough strength. Meanwhile, outside of Thriller Bark, in the Florian Triangle sky, a figure swiftly passed with a paw-shaped ball and a man holding a Bible inside it, advancing towards Moria's territory. Chapter 257, Thriller Bark 04. Moria was in a tough spot. As he saw Luffy approaching at high speed in the air, he clenched his teeth and tried to attack. However, it was far too uneven a fight. Luffy was quicker, moving his fist towards Moria's face. This time Moria managed to escape at the last moment as he transformed into a bat. He looked to the side and saw several little bats trying to escape. Luffy saw him trying to escape and would not let it go. He quickly aimed his gun and began to fire. Bang! Bang! His shots exploded in the air, creating fireballs and burning the bats. As Moria felt the heat and pain of being burned, he growled. Damn, what can I do? He only had one chance to fight Luffy. However, the pirate didn't even give him time to gather strength with his shadows. As the sky burst and lit up with Luffy's flames amidst all the fog, in the castle, Ruma, currently with Brook's shadow, looked seriously at Kuina. Who are you? He asked the woman challenging him, sensing that this woman was no ordinary person. Shimatsuki Kuina. Kuina replied calmly. Leaving the zombie a bit surprised, he asked curiously. Are you from my family, then? Yes, it's true, you are my ancestor, very famous, since the famous Shimatsuki name comes from you even after so many centuries. She said as she readied her sword. He felt her desire to fight and was satisfied. Very well, I'll see if you truly are worthy of the Shimatsuki name. He said, and his sword, the famous Shujui, began to glow with his energy, and the next moment both of them flew towards each other, kicking the ground, and their swords collided while the crew watched the fight with interest. The impact generated a blue and a chilling energy as Kuina began to unleash her power. However, Ruma, expecting a fierce fight with his descendant, was surprised to find himself starting to lose as the girl began to press him. Maybe with this body. You are just a shadow of your past, she murmured. Now stronger than Zoro in this part of the original after the training in Skypiea, she began to release a chilling energy, freezing everything in a straight line. Ruma had to back off as his arm froze. Ruma didn't even have time to react when she reappeared in front of him, kicking him hard, breaking his arm. An event similar to what happened to Don Flamingo as he flew, exploding the ground with his own body raising the ground and dust. Well, she won pretty quickly. Zoro commented, even sounding a bit downhearted. I thought it would be a challenge, but in the end, he was just a weak shell. Apart from Kuina's fight. Alvida spoke up at that moment. What are we going to do with these zombies? She asked. Yuta sighed, listening and gaining a bit of courage. Leave it to me, Luffy asked me to handle something. I don't know why he wants this, but okay, let's try. Brook, get your bass, she said, tossing the instrument for him to play. Alright. Brook was surprised with Kuina defeating easily the host of his shadow when he took the bass, but he couldn't help thinking that he shouldn't be surprised, this crew is full of monsters. He took the instrument and prepared to play at that moment. Meanwhile, in the sky, Moria was flying backwards, blood dripping. He looked back and saw the pirate pursuing him using moonwalk. Won't you leave me alone? He growled. Come on, Moria, if that's all you can do, I'm disappointed, Luffy said with a smile. A frustrated Moria with some injuries stopped in the air and stared at Luffy still frustrated. What do you want? Moria could not help but ask, finally seeing that he was being cornered against this pirate. We are pirates, Moria. You might work for the government, but the world still works this way. Don't worry, I have no interest in killing you, especially since you haven't done anything to deserve that. However, I do want to take your wealth and stuff. How about you surrender while I take all your money, what do you say? Luffy commented, but he knew nothing like that would happen, he was just provoking the 7 warlords of the seas. Do you think I'm going to give you my things? Morin growled, and Luffy just shrugged. Hearing this, he charged at Moria again. After all, pirates communicate with fists. As Moria took another punch, feeling the impact, flying backward with more blood trickling from his nose, music started playing in the middle of the island. What's that? Moria, still in the air, looked after gathering with several bats and materializing. He looked towards the castle, at the entrance, and saw a crowd of zombies doing something strange. They are dancing? He exclaimed, frowning, as he had commanded them to obey him. Why would they be dancing when they had an order? He repeated the question, dazed, Since he was the owner of the Shadow Fruit model, Shadow Human Devil Fruit, no one should be able to disobey him. It wasn't just a female voice, there was a melody with bass and beats echoing across the entire island. Haha. Looks like it worked. Luffy said with a small laugh, looking at the group of dancing zombies. He had played Michael Jackson's Thriller. Writing the lyrics and melody with rhythm, he imagined something like this might happen, but was surprised and Yuta was singing well, giving him a nostalgic feeling from a past life. The Straw Hats were shocked by what they were seeing. The zombies, who were looking at them, ready to devour, began to dance and perform synchronized steps in a style of dance they had never seen before. Yuta sang while Brook played the bass and a type of drum that beat with the feet, to back the music. Yuta sang the chorus while the zombies moved from side to side, raising their hands and dancing. How fun! Shirahoshi clapped her hands, watching the show with a certain charm in her eyes. And it certainly is unbelievable. Nami couldn't help but comment, stunned. Incredible. Vippo shouted, also excited, forgetting his fear of zombies. Foo-foo, and it certainly is a sight we don't see every day. Robin commented. Yuta continued to sing as the zombies synchronized with their steps. There were 1,000 zombies. This is quite fun. A zombie spoke while dancing. I can't control my body, but it really is fun. Haha, look at my steps. They continued finding it fun as they took their synchronized steps, filling the whole area while they danced. How is this possible? Moria snarled from the sky. However, that was his mistake, taking his eyes off Luffy, because the Straw Hat appeared behind him, raising his hand and punching him hard. You should pay attention to our fight. Luffy said before Moria flew like a rocket against gravity as the ground exploded, and Luffy landed in the middle of the dust. What's going on here? Someone approached the fight, not being a zombie. Moria went flying. A person in the middle of the forest shouted. Amazing, it seems someone has come to face the 7 warlords of the seas and is winning. Lola said among the crowd of spectators. Luffy let the dust settle while Moria lay on the ground, unconscious. Well, that was pretty fast. He couldn't help but comment. However, he sensed something coming and behind him there was an explosion at that moment, with something falling from the sky hitting the ground hard while the trees beside it fell with the ground cracking. He didn't take his eyes off Moria, who lay on the ground unconscious, as he just laughed with a smile. You finally arrived, and I thought I would find you here earlier, but it seems I was mistaken, Kuma. Luffy turned as the shadow emerged from all the dust and Bartholomew Kuma stepped out of it with his Bible clutched between his belly and arm. Kuma emerged from the smoke and looked at Luffy, as if scanning him, and finally spoke after a few seconds. Monkey D. Luffy. He said, his voice sounding robotic. Luffy didn't mind that, noticing the voice devoid of any emotion. It's good to finally meet you. Luffy said with a smile. After all, this guy had a significant backstory, probably the saddest in the entire original work, to the point of becoming a cyborg to save Bonnie, a pirate he hoped to eventually meet in the Sabati archipelago. Kuma decided to speak again. I need you to leave Moria alone, he said in his usual tone. I can leave him. But, Luffy said as his fists began to turn into flames. I've fought with all the 7 warlords of the seas, except you. You know what that means? Luffy asked as his flames began to intensify. Kuma remained silent. It means that I need to fight you right now. I promise it'll be a light fight, but I don't want you to hold back against me. Luffy said, as his body was covered in flames and he began his Phase 2 transformation directly. Since this man was certainly stronger than Moria and Luffy wanted to have some more fun before leaving Thriller Bark, especially since this place had become so easy and disappointing with Moria's weakness, that Luffy would have to fight someone else. Kuma watched calmly, his expression unchanged as he began to step heavily on the ground, and raising his palm with the design of a bear's paw, preparing to attack Luffy. This is good. Let's start. Luffy announced with a smile amid his complete transformation. Chapter 258, Thriller Bark 05. Luffy remained there, watching Kuma maintain the same position while his flames burned, warming the environment around them. TSK. Seeing his opponent stationary, he decided to act. With a quick movement, he blasted the ground, flying towards the 7 warlords of the seas, quickly catching up with him using his Phase 2 speed. He tensed his muscles as he clenched his fist, arriving in front of Kuma, and unleashed his punch with great effort against the cyborg. However, Kuma simply raised his hand and Luffy punched his palm with the bear paw. What happened next was a childish sound, as if a child squeezed his rubber ducky, creating that sound. Luffy was stunned as he lost all the impact of his force. We were quite amazed by this devil fruit of Kuma. With his punch being diverted by Kuma's power, the 7 warlords of the seas didn't remain idle, and with his other hand, Kuma pointed it open in front of Luffy and, before the pirate could react, a shock field emerged from the paw, catching Luffy and throwing him back as he flew, lifting trees and ground, going straight for 50 meters until it exploded. Luffy didn't immediately emerge from the middle of that explosion. Like Kuma, who had been waiting in the same place. Then, in the midst of all that dust, a glow happened and flames began firing against the cyborg. Kuma looked at it calmly and raised his hands again, launching also numerous paw-shaped balls, sending them against the flames. The first air ball that collided with the fireball created a huge explosion between shock and pressure against the flame explosion. And it was not limited to just that one. Numerous fireballs from Luffy began to collide with Kuma's air balls, creating countless explosions. The island began to have constant explosions echoing throughout, at this moment, while all the people did not stop looking this way at the moment. This, murmured Usopp, quickly sensing what was happening with his observation haki. What's happening? Nami asked, looking at all those explosions knowing Luffy was there fighting, with his purple flames. Luffy is fighting someone else, and someone much stronger than Moria. Usopp commented with a calm face. And while the explosions continued elsewhere, Moria finally woke up after being stunned, breathing heavily. Removing his stones, he started to leave the place, looking at the battle happening. I will take revenge. He spoke frustrated. Meanwhile, the flames and balls finally stopped exploding. Kuma saw Luffy flying using his wings while preparing his sword emitting red electricity. He pointed it at the 7 warlords of the seas and launched a lightning bolt at Kuma without caring about Moria awakened perceiving through his haki. The bolt traveled through the space at high speed, yet was stopped as soon as it hit Kuma's bomb, accumulating energy to be reflected, while the lightning illuminated the entire sky of Thriller Bark, but not hitting Luffy, because he was no longer in the air. Luffy took advantage of this time as he disappeared from in front of the attack and landed beside Kuma blasting the ground and, before Kuma could react, Luffy fired a powerful punch into an opening. A cyborg flying devastated through the island, while exploding the ground with his own body. The impact was so strong that it dragged through half of the place, while there were some people hiding in the forest, who were approaching, curious to see what was happening, quickly saw the ground rising in front of them, unable to react, being hit as they flew out, screaming frightened. And Kuma finally came out of the end of the explosion showing no emotions, while he looked a bit hurt. Luffy quickly started heading his way while flapping his wings. Kuma, seeing that, opened his mouth and the laser began to accumulate energy, firing directly at the pirate who easily dodged and approached with his sword again. And, along with the first attack, Kuma fired shock paw pads, exploding in the area. Luffy began zigzagging in the midst of the destruction, dodging both flying stones from the ground or the explosions themselves. A cloud of dust rose from the area, and Luffy appeared above Kuma, swiftly spinning his body with a sword to deliver a strong slash to the 7 warlords of the seas, but Kuma covered his hand and placed it forward to block the attack again. The sword seemed to hit something soft while surrounded by electricity, but it had no effect against Kuma's power. However, Luffy just smiled and vanished from the spot, leaving only his sword generating red lightning in Kuma's palm. Meanwhile, Kuma realized that Luffy was already below him, preparing a hook. He couldn't react as he was hit in his belly, exploding upwards. Luffy didn't even breathe as he quickly grabbed his sword from the air left by the 7 warlords of the seas and appeared above an out-of-control Kuma. He even tried to react but the pirate was faster, punching him in the back, sending him plummeting to the ground while colliding with the earth, creating a hole and cracks like a spider's web. The forest began to collapse with his increased strength. The entire island shook with this impact. Luffy saw all that destruction while landing in a hole over 20 meters deep. Can you still hold on to that Bible after all this? Luffy spoke, amazed, seeing that Kuma was still protecting it. I really want to know what's written in there. He couldn't help commenting in a calm tone. Kuma lay there, still conscious but immobile. Luffy knew he could move, which made him curious as to why the man stayed planted like a nail in the earth. Luffy also didn't attack him anymore, simply cancelled his transformation, returning to human form and sat on the edge of the hole. You know, Kuma. It's hard to talk about this. Luffy began, scratching his head, as if he hadn't just been fighting this cyborg. I know the truth about Bonnie. He said. The cyborg, though showing no expression on his face, moved it to clearly look at Luffy, showing he was surprised, even on his half-machine face. Not just that, I know your story. He said, not caring how irrational this sounded. What do you know? Kuma spoke this time, maintaining a neutral and slightly robotic voice. About you being a slave, your race, about Bonnie's mother, about your deal with the 5 elders, about Nika. He said. How? Kuma spoke again. I have my ways. Luffy commented, wanting to change the subject and went on to speak. You know. He started to laugh. A long time ago, my sister and I were playing in the forest. However, there was a moment when I saw a man watching us. I wondered who he was, we were kids, I even thought he was a big bear. Luffy said with a smile, and looked at Kuma. But it was you were watching us, watching Lucy, more specifically. Luffy spoke, knowing that Kuma had really appeared, only that at that time he didn't know him, nor did he know. Kuma stayed silent. Joy Boy has returned, I know you know this. I must say, Joy Girl, ha 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 ha. Although she is in the Navy, she won't stay there for long, I'll be taking her out of there. Luffy spoke, after all, Lucy couldn't stay in that organization after the war. Is it really her? He said, sounding a rare feeling of disbelief. The coming of Nika was quite surprising, even for a man who always believed that he would return. You will see it in the future. I can also protect Bonnie. He said. This caught the attention even more of Kuma, who, despite being silent, seemed both surprised by what Luffy had said to him. Can you protect her? He asked. Yes, you can be sure of that. As soon as I find her, I can take care of her. Luffy spoke calmly. Bonnie would be a very welcome addition after the war. Thank you. Was the only thing he said. Alright, Luffy was going to say something, but suddenly a tremor occurred, turning his attention now to his back and seeing a large shadow emerging in the middle of the island. Luffy raised an eyebrow. It seems he finally decided to act. Luffy murmured internally, he had left Moria on purpose so that he would increase his forces. After all, he wanted to have a Megazord fight. While Yuta was making the zombies dance with unique synchronization and steps, they suddenly began to fall one after another. What's happening? Yuta was surprised by this, and even Brook pointed at their feet. The shadows, they're leaving their bodies. He exclaimed as they began to move toward the forest, leaving a crowd of inert zombies on the ground. Kuina, who had been fighting her ancestor, had just finished the fight at this moment. Her ancestor lay defeated on the ground. You really are a worthy descendant, although I am not at my prime to face you with my true strength, still, I am satisfied. But it's a shame, I regret not seeing all your power. He said with satisfaction. Kuina just nodded silently, about to pick up the Shizue sword. But just as she was about to grab the sword with Rima raising it to her, suddenly, the shadow of the zombie left his body, making him fall like a puppet. Kuina looked towards where the shadow was dragged across the ground, heading for the forest, while Moria gathered them all in that place. He was determined to face the fight with Luffy and get his revenge as his shadows were devoured by his body, and he grew larger and larger. Luffy, still sitting, watched the shadow grow and grow, until Moria exploded at his peak. Straw Hat! He shouted, stomping on the ground, and the entire island trembled with a part of it rising. All the fog had disappeared, while all of Thriller Bark was shown as it really was, with a large candle in the center indicating it was a ship all along. Luffy turned back to Kuma, still buried in the ground and lying down. Man, I'm gonna deal with that guy over there, then we'll talk more, okay? He said. Kuma remained silent. His mission was to prevent Luffy from killing Moria, but he saw him stand up and do nothing. Luffy began to walk towards the giant. Run. Moria is going to kill everyone. People began to emerge from the forest running to the opposite side where Luffy was heading. A crazed Moria looked at Luffy, who was still in human form, yet flames began to emerge from him, starting to burn with his cloak fluttering and becoming more violent by the moment. Then from Luffy exploded a pillar of fire, which shone in the middle of the ship and flew towards the sky, illuminating the darkness of Thriller Bark, and when he had finished burning, a creature of fire still kept the place lit with its rocky flames, stepping on the ground while cracking it, equal in size to Moria. Ifrit looked at Moria, who was gritting his teeth at that moment, with fierce eyes, and then growled. Now the battle would be between giants. Chapter 259, Thriller Bark 06. Moria stared at Luffy, now transformed, and clenched his teeth as he prepared to launch an attack. He charged forward and ready to punch while his feet destroyed the ground moving towards Luffy. Ifrit did the same, with a backward movement while strengthening his muscles. He quickly collided with Moria's fist, creating a huge impact across the island as soon as the two connected. The sight of the two giants in the middle of the island fighting terrified everyone who had not seen a fight at this level. With the two colossi hitting each other, everything began to shake. The people in the forest, increasingly desperate, began to scream as they ran towards the opposite side of that chaos. We must flee from here. What kind of fight is this? One of them shouted. Could one of them marry me? Lola asked, looking at the giants. What kind of question is that? All the men around him shouted at that moment, making faces. As they screamed in fear and ran, trying to get away, reaching the far opposite end of Moria's ship, the crew watched the fight, standing firm, yet trembling. The castle began to crumble behind them, as some ran in fear. Everything is going to collapse. Chopper shouted, circling around. This is not super cool. Frankie exclaimed. We have to get out of here. Brook exclaimed, trying to find a place to run. Hey, where are you going? Zoro spoke to him. As Brook tried to get away, He felt his bones being bitten. At that moment, Chaozu was clinging to him again, growling for him to come back. Brook was startled and, before he could react, already growing, while not removing the teeth from his bones, he was lifted into the air and spat back to the group, as Chaozu returned to normal size, sitting there and barking. "My mount!" Yamato complained, almost crying with the false Cerberus fallen on the ground, having lost its shadow and now turned into an inert body. "I'll finish him." Yamato complained again, grimacing as he drew his weapon to avenge his mount. "Wait, Yamato. Luffy wouldn't like you getting involved in his fight." Nojiko commented. "I guess you're right," Yamato admitted, falling silent again, scratching his head. Meanwhile, in the fight between Luffy and Moria, both seemed evenly matched as they dragged 50 meters to the opposite side across the terrain. Moria did not speak but just growled and once again, charged at Luffy, trying to hit him. Luffy raised his forearm, defending from the attack and stopping it while he felt the impact and was dragged by the impact while lifting the ground with his feet for a few hundred meters. Moria did not give Luffy an easy time and advanced trying to hit him with another arm, while creating a wind with the force of his giant fist. Ifrit dodged by moving his head back, while Moria hit nothing. Luffy was below him, preparing an uppercut and sending it with force upwards, hitting Moria's face with a powerful impact. The sound echoed throughout the ship, and with flames from his fist, Moria fell backwards, exploding trees as he rolled. The whole space was lifting up. The smoke line continued to rise while creating a line to the castle of the place without stopping, which soon the people below realized. Hey, he's not coming this way!" Nami shouted, stunned, as she saw that explosion coming towards them, consuming everything in its path. "You could well get us out of here." Reija commented next to Nami, who nodded. She raised her hand and created her space with the Operation Fruit model, modification human, creating a large space spanning hundreds of meters. All the crew members disappeared, all but one person. Reija threw her cigarette away and looked at that monster, going in its direction. "That wretch. I swear I'm going to kill that girl," she growled before flying away, not wanting to dirty her clothes. Moria exploded his own castle with his immense body, while rising enraged. "This bastard!" he shouted, as he looked down and saw an open chamber from the demolition. He grabbed the body of Oz, which was still without shadows, and threw it at Luffy. Luffy saw that and gathered fire in his mouth before launching a beam towards Oz, who exploded, disintegrating entirely the next moment. "My strongest soldier." Moria couldn't help but regret doing that as Oz disappeared from the world. "Moria, I doubt you will continue this way," Luffy murmured, looking at Moria with his spasms of rage. Suddenly, he felt something in his stomach. His shadows were starting to escape through his mouth, and Luffy took advantage of this moment and shot above him. And before Moria could react, he had already grabbed him by the arm and threw him with such force backwards, making him explode on the ground. And it didn't stop there. As Moria tried to stand up, Luffy's fist hit right in the stomach, blowing a bunch of shadows out of his mouth. "No, it can't be. I can't be losing," he said, but his current form was one he could not sustain for long. He launched several shadows in all directions trying to catch Luffy, who moved back a bit but threw a fireball at Moria, making his body explode. From the explosion, Moria emerged burned charging at Luffy, who hit him this time without Luffy doing anything. However, what was hit was Luffy's knee. "How strange, I swear I aimed at your head." Moria couldn't help but comment, dazed. "Haven't you realized yet?" Luffy spoke, with a much larger voice than before, and Moria finally looked shocked as he looked up. After all, Luffy had changed his form. "What is this size?" Brook pointed out, frightened. "He increased his size 8-fold, he can do that," Robin commented, looking admiringly at Luffy. "What size is this?" Chopper asked admiringly with stars in his eyes. "This must be the size of Laboon," Vivi said. "What? Laboon is 400 meters. Usopp screamed. "Luffy in his transformation is 50 meters, 8 times 50 is 400. Vippo commented. "What monsters? Luffy has become this." Ute exclaimed, not having seen something so big. "Wolf, wolf!" Chaozu barked. As they were in awe, Moria looked furrowed, even having consumed 1,000 shadows and lost some of them. What was he compared to this giant? He only reached his knee. "Sorry Moria, but this is going to hurt for you," Luffy said before raising his fist and throwing it down at Moria below him. Moria could do nothing but look at it, thinking it would be his death. Boom. Even in the sea outside the fog, an amethyst light shone within it. For the people inside the place, it was blinding to look at it, making everyone close their eyes as Luffy exploded Moria, the explosion beginning to create armor throughout the ship, starting to crack it and divide it with people screaming at that. While there were other people flying, due to one side of the ship lifting with the explosion. Luffy saw no more sign of a giant Moria in the middle of a huge crater that he created, as hundreds of shadows began to flee in all directions. He began to reduce his size until he returned to his 2.1 meters and fell as if a meteor of flames, flying downward. He entered the clearness looking like a small light with his full size, and landed in front of a defeated Moria, while he had blood all over his body and white eyes with his mouth open and tongue out. Luffy looked at him for a while before a sound of footsteps appeared, with a robotic tone. Luffy didn't even need to look to see him approaching. "I'll take him." He spoke while Luffy just nodded. After all, he wasn't going to do anything but defeat Moria. "Alright. We'll see each other soon." Luffy spoke before jumping and leaving there, exiting the large crater. Kuma looked at him and returned to Moria, picking him up and using the paw of his hand on him, disappearing with a sound of a bubble popping. As Luffy ascended into the air, he couldn't help but look around the island, making a small sound of admiration. "Amazing, the destruction I caused with the last attack. Well, it happens," he simply said and moved on to where his companions were, sensing them through his observation haki. All of them stood on the edge of a 50-meter crack, dividing the two sides, as Luffy landed gently on the spot, his cape fluttering with the landing. "Luffy-sama, that was amazing!" Shirahoshi exclaimed, raising her fist as if she had been cheering for Luffy. While the others had varying looks, some seemed dissatisfied with the destruction created by the captain, like Brook there trembling and Frankie frowning, others with a common expression and others admiring, but all remained with their own thoughts about it. "What happened to the 7 warlords of the seas?" Nojiko asked, seeing that Luffy was alone. "He fell defeated, but another 7 warlords of the seas I fought, Kuma, took him away," Luffy clarified calmly. "Luffy, you should have hit him more," Yamato complained immediately, still angry about losing his mount. "Well, anyway, I see that you handled things well while I was fighting," he commented with his arms crossed and an arrogant smile, seeing Kuina had Shushui in her hands, making him wonder if she would exchange her current sword for this one. And there was Perona in Shirahoshi's arms, still unconscious. He approached the ghost girl and slapped her on the head, making the girl open her eyes slowly and dazedly. "How strange, I had a weird dream where a pirate group attacked us," she murmured, rubbing her eyes as she tried to look better, blinking her eyes, and Luffy appeared in front of her, looking at her with a small smile. "Hello, girl," he greeted her. The girl was startled, jumping out of Shirahoshi's arm and flying. "Help!" she screamed. "Moria-sama, save me!" she cried, not knowing that her former captain wasn't even here anymore, but she couldn't escape for long. After all, Luffy grabbed her by the clothes. "Wait a moment. Let's talk first," he said. He placed her back in the middle of the turmoil, while the girl looked scared and even her ghosts showed scared expressions, mimicking their mistress. "I won't hurt you, but I'm pretty sure you know where the treasures of this island are," he spoke, since originally she took the treasures and was going to flee the place, so surely she knew where the safe was. However, it would be hard to find the safe with the mansion now demolished. Even without her, this was not a problem for him. He just wanted to interact with this girl before placing her in his fleet, as her ability was quite powerful if well trained. "Why would I do that?" she exclaimed, screaming like an indignant little girl, still frightened. "Because I've already decided," he spoke, looking at the girl, no longer waiting for her to speak of the other, while everyone already imagined what he wanted. "I want you in my fleet," he finished, while the girl looked at him shocked. "How can you say that to people?" she screamed. "I've decided," Luffy spoke arrogantly. "I refuse," she shouted, rebutting him. "I refuse your refusal," Luffy said with arrogance. Everyone listened to this discussion, shaking their heads, as when their captain, or husband to many, decided something, it was impossible for him not to do it. Chapter 260, Thriller Barco 7. Luffy returned to the castle, or what was left of it, rummaging through the debris until he found the safe using his haki. "Well, that wasn't hard," he commented upon locating it. His gaze shifted back to his crew, who were accompanied, but specifically to one person who could handle this mess. "Hey, Hugo, can you clear this path for us?" he asked. "Yes, Captain," Hugo responded, placing his hand on the ground as the area immediately began to open up, creating a staircase downwards, using his earth power. "Let's go!" Luffy exclaimed as the path to the gold was cleared, and before he could move, Nami was so quick that even Luffy couldn't react as she entered the room filled with Moria's gold. The place was still intact even after all the explosion that had occurred. Luffy approached with the others and saw Nami jump onto the gold, screaming, "Gold! It's all mine!" she exclaimed, her eyes seeing dollar signs. "She never changes," Nojiko commented from behind, while Luffy just smiled. He saw this and realized that he could reward his crew. "Well, take whatever you want," he announced. He hadn't given anything to the crew for a long time. Some accepted while others didn't care much for the gold. Those members who accepted quickly started picking what they were interested in. Luffy looked at the girl with crossed arms, floating with her ghosts. "Don't you want the gold? You can take it," he suggested. "Why are you giving this to me?" she asked, a bit surprised, although at this moment considered stolen. After all, this gold belonged to her crew, or former crew, she still didn't know. "Maybe you're part of my fleet now, so it's my duty to take care of you," he said, with no malice, just stating the truth. However, Perona seemed to misunderstand as she blushed, yelling at him. "Don't say that kind of thing out of the blue," she exclaimed in embarrassment. Luffy scratched his nose, looking like Garp. "Alright, goodbye." He turned back to focus on the crew as he left Perona aside, and the girl seemed to become even more infuriated. "You can't leave a woman like that after saying those things," she shouted. Luffy didn't seem to care, as he watched his crew enjoying themselves in that vault. Chopper had filled himself with gold looking like a rapper. Usopp also looked like another gangster. Yuta had also put on various gold necklaces, rings, and bracelets. "Hey, Luffy, look at me, look, am I pretty?" She approached Luffy, making a seductive face. "You look beautiful," Luffy said, and without anyone seeing, he slapped her buttocks, making the girl jump, looking at him and at his hand for a moment before she said in a tone, "Don't do that here." She went back to the group here. "If Shanks saw me doing this, he'd probably kill me," Luffy murmured, yet also not stopping from watching that beautiful ass going back to get more gold, wanting to have fun with her tonight. Luffy made a mental note about it. Meanwhile, the crew continued grabbing the gold, with Nami being the most ambitious of the group, as always, until her sister tried to set some limit, but the girl was still unbeatable. After everyone grabbed some gold or anything else that interested them, Luffy approached and placed his hand on the ground while all the gold began to disappear, entering the system. After all, he needed more money, although it was little. After all, no more than 400 million in gold was left. "Well, let's go back," Luffy said, already sensing through the Hakia crowd forming outside. When they returned, Perona approached him. "There are a lot of people wanting to talk to you," she commented, and Luffy nodded. Luffy nodded and saw that she didn't run away. After all, she had nowhere to go, even though she hadn't accepted Luffy's logic. All the people on the island had recovered their shadows and wanted to talk to the man who defeated Moria, but everyone still looked at Luffy with a lot of caution, still remembering the monster he had become in the middle of the island. "She's here." Luffy looked at Bigman's daughter, Lola, in front of the group. She was as in the story, quite large and not very beautiful, while she looked at him like all of them. "Who are these people?" Kuina asked, as she and many others hadn't seen anything on the island except zombies. "They were like me, they lost their shadows to Moria and have been hiding here unable to leave," Brook clarified. "I see. Maybe they've came to thank us," Chopper suggested. "Maybe they came to ask for food?" Reiju commented. "Maybe they need medical help," Lami said. "They might come to give us a reward," Nami said cheerfully. As they speculated on what the people had come for, Luffy continued to look at the group without saying anything, contemplating what he could do for them. "Excuse me." The silence was broken by Lola herself. "Yes." Luffy looked at her as she held his gaze for a moment before speaking again. "Will you marry me?" she asked. "Bippo. Zoro. Nojiko-o. Chaochu. Reiju. Vivi. Shirahoshi. Frank Shaw. Megalo. Nami. Chopper. Hugo. Hiki Fu. Nico Robin. Brook. Yamato. Usopp. Crew. Alvida. Kuina. Greg. Lami. Baby 5. Laboon. Perona. Luffy. The place seemed to go mute. The entire crew was shocked and stunned, as no one, not even a single word could be produced. After all, who asks that to someone after such a situation? "Master, should I kill this woman?" Baby 5 asked, breaking the silence for the first time. The place remained in deadly silence until finally, Luffy decided to respond. "No." He simply replied. After all, Lola was not the type of woman he liked. Then, the group behind Lola began to shout, "Rejection number 4850." Seeming to celebrate the fact that she had been rejected so many times. 4850. Usopp seemed shocked. "It seems she is quite persistent," Alvida commented, as she might have been in the same situation, if she hadn't met Luffy and he hadn't punched her with his fist and made her eat his fruit. "Well, anyway," Lola continued, speaking undeterred by the rejection. "You fought against Moria, didn't you? In the end, you defeated him. We owe you our thanks," she said. "Well, that was just a consequence, but what will you do now?" Luffy asked. Lola looked at her group before turning back to Luffy. Well, no one knows yet. She commented. Then I have a proposal, how about joining my fleet? Luffy invited. Luffy has been inviting a lot of people to the fleet lately. Vivi commented. As the captain's secretary, she had to record all his actions. Do you want me to join your fleet? Lola asked, and Luffy nodded. So is this a marriage proposal? She exclaimed, hopeful, leaving everyone stunned once more. But Luffy denied. No. He simply said, while everyone shouted 4,851 rejections. Haha. You guys are funny. Luffy had to admit, laughing a little at that. Well, anyway, I am giving you a chance to grow stronger. If you don't want it, that's okay, but if you want to fight and get strong, I'm giving you a chance to join under my flag. Luffy said, as he turned back to look at the crew. Well, let's stay one more day waiting for their response. Meanwhile, let's have our usual feast. He said as he took his ship out of his pocket and threw it in front of the destroyed castle, while Zoro and Hugo would gather the food and loot. Soon, they began to enjoy themselves as usual, and many members of Lola's group joined, and soon the entire island was celebrating in the middle of the Florian Triangle. Lola continued to insist on asking Luffy to marry her, but he refused 10 times, while he paid attention to Utan Brook singing. Until the next day, Luffy was a bit surprised to see that everyone had decided to join the fleet. After all, they had nowhere else to go and preferred to trust the savior who had rescued them from Moria's clutches. Luffy nodded with satisfaction and turned his attention to Bippo. Bippo, can you take them to Skypiea? Later you can meet us in the Sabati archipelago with the Vivre cards. Luffy said, as they would go to the Call Me Belt first. He wanted to see Hancock and his future children and pick up Enel. But Captain Bippo was a little scared by the idea of going alone, but Luffy had a plan. He quickly took something out of his pocket and placed it on Bippo's head. Alright, now you're ready. Luffy commented. Now Bippo had a black power afro, and gained a new confidence, while some women looked at it as if they were a bunch of idiots with Luffy and his illogical things. Yes, Captain. Nothing can stop me. Bippo exclaimed, punching the air. Well, Luffy began, turning his gaze to the members, especially the animals. Soon we'll face the biggest challenge we've ever had at sea. It won't be easy to say this, but not all of you can participate in what's coming. Luffy started, capturing everyone's attention with that statement and what their captain meant by it. I would like some of you to not participate in this, after all it will be very dangerous. Luffy continued. Laboon, Crew, Greg, Megalo, Brook, and Frankie. I would like you to go to Skypiea, as we are going to enter a war with the Navy bigger than what happened at Anai's lobby. I want you to stay safe and train. He said. The animals were surprised by this and a bit shaken, seeing that they would be separated. It won't be permanent, just a few weeks. We'll be back to Skypiea soon. Luffy assured them, as they began to nod. After all, it was better not to risk their own lives. Luffy and his crew then began to prepare to leave. Meanwhile, Luffy left various papers for the crew that would be separating, like documents he bought at the store for Frankie about Vegapunk. They would begin to get stronger after the war ended, as they had joined the group only a short time ago. Suddenly, a part of Thriller Bark began to lift with the power of Bippo, and with the cracks Luffy created in his fight, the crew found itself divided. A small group would stay in a safe place with the new members of the fleet, and another part would be going to the Red Mountain. Luffy had given Sunny Go to Bippo to use later, and then took the Black Pearl and began to sail out of the Florian Triangle. Chapter 261, Taking Enel. Black Pearl continued its course towards the end of the Floriano Triangle as the dark clouds began to dissipate and the sun started to appear ahead of the ship with its first rays piercing through the mist, while they were finally leaving the territory and emerging near the end of the first part of the Grand Line. Finally the sun. Usopp shouted excitedly. I'll put on my bikini, I might even leave some marks for tonight. Alvida said beside Luffy, teasing him. I would love that. Luffy said, smiling at his wife. As Alvida left, Nami approached with the Eternal Pose bracelet empty. Hey, Luffy, what's the plan? What's our next goal? Nami asked. Here. Luffy said with a smile, handing over Enel's Vivre card, which was intact, meaning he hadn't died in his isolated training. Head for the Calm Belt, it's time to pick him up. Luffy saw Nami nod without fear of entering a territory like the Calm Belt. I hope that thing is stronger than before. I don't want him to embarrass us in the war by getting punched by an admiral and falling defeated. Luffy murmured in his mind, as his ship sailed into the waters dominated by the Sea Kings, speeding towards a specific island. It didn't take long for the waters around the ship to become wilder, nor for a huge shadow to appear in front of the ship, lifting a large part of the water into the air and revealing itself to be a gigantic serpent. Raju. Luffy called his cook. Yes. She approached curiously. How's the food stock? Luffy asked. It's full, you stocked it with the last 10 Sea Kings you downsized. She informed him, and he nodded. Luffy turned his attention to another woman in the group. Shira, can you send him away? Luffy asked, since there was no need to kill it. Alright, Luffy-sama. She said, flying above the ship and looking at the serpent. Can you leave, King of the Sea-sama? She asked in an innocent tone. The monster did not respond, but merely nodded before returning to the sea, splashing water everywhere. Very good, you're getting very good at this. Luffy praised her. Did you see Luffy-sama, was I amazing? She approached Luffy, grabbing him with her hands before placing his head between her breasts. Yes, you're doing great. Luffy said, his voice muffled as he was embraced by her bosom. He's taking advantage of her innocence. Kuina complained. She's 18, she's not a kid. Rage shrugged. He's a womanizer. What did you expect? Lami complained. Spoken by one of the women he picks up. Nojiko commented. I'm his wife, aren't I? Lami retorted. Anyway, she seems to be enjoying it. Vivi commented as Shirahoshi seemed quite enthusiastic about it. Innocent, my foot. She wants to become Luffy's wife and has made that clear so many times, she just hasn't because she needs to talk to her father. Yuta said. As the girls whispered, Luffy finally came out from the mermaid's bosom and approached her ear, whispering something before moving away. Can you do that? Luffy asked and Shirahoshi looked thoughtful. I'll try. She said as she went to the edge of the boat. Listen, all sea creatures, I order that none of you come near these ships. Shirahoshi shouted as she released her conqueror's haki and a telepathic wave. The sea seemed to tremble at that moment. A tsunami. Chop ran scared. But it didn't last long, as the sea began to calm down shortly after. Haha. Very well, you are a true ruler of the sea. Luffy praised her, seeing that she was gaining control of her power. Poseidon. Thank you, Luffy-sama. She said shyly. The ship returned to its usual activities, with Luffy sunbathing with his girls or taking one or another to a corner of the ship, varying from girl to girl with his already large harem. It was 2 days later that they finally arrived at the island indicated by the Vivre card. Like any island in this region, it was covered with a dense jungle, while the ship began to hit against the sand of the beach. Everything seemed normal, with some sounds of seagulls, sea waves, and some animals in the forest. Luffy was the first to start disembarking from the ship as he headed to the island. I'll check on our companion, and you all, well, do whatever you want. Luffy said as he let his crew members free to explore the island or stay on the ship. It didn't matter to him as he proceeded into the forest. He was delving deeper into the forest, using haki to subdue any wild animal that tried to stop him, since he did not want to waste time on such distractions and continued until he began to hear loud explosions of earth breaking and trees being destroyed in the distance. Approaching, he finally saw Enel fighting against 2 giraffes that were stomping on the ground, breaking it with their enormous size, much larger than a typical giraffe. After all, the monsters in this part of the world had an overgrowth, more than normal, not to mention some that were as strong as a vice-admiral. Enel was not using his powers while trying to create haki in his hands, combating the giraffe's hooves that tried to crush him. Luffy nodded in satisfaction. He knew Enel had noticed him, while seeming more concerned with the fight than Luffy being there, dodging blows and charging at the giraffes, punching here and there. He finally knocked one down, while the other, furious, launched into attacks in his direction. The fight continued, destroying the area, turning the place into chaos with the intense battle. It was at a moment when he was counter-attacking as soon as he found an opening.